Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the council meeting of December 17th, Executive Committee of the Whole. Ms. Banks, would you call the roll?
You're supposed to help out.
I just put them on again. Okay. Ms. Seymour? Here. Mr. Moss?
Here.
Mr. Lance? Ms. Jordan? Here. Mr. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. McCaffrey? Mr. Seibert?
Here.
You have 7 members present. If you could bear with me, I think we forgot to put the mics out.
Yes, we did.
There was at the game. My son's manager was never
I don't think so. I think they're all right here.
all these groups, and right after they warmed up,
Friday night?
You couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it. It was like a frozen
Friday
moment.
night, and then the holiday party.
But
125
when I say these were some of
Right, they were
the kids and
got both of them?
the group, you know, and the picture of the kids out there. And then it was there, it's like, this was a lost moment. It was unbelievable. I've never
We have,
response like that.
microphones are working?
Yep. We're all
Why don't we start this meeting with a moment of silence for victims of the horrific event in Newtown, Connecticut. First on our agenda this evening, we have a speaker, or actually he's not doing a presentation. It's Gary Petrovich from the Oakland County Road Commission. We invited Mr. Petrovich to join us this evening so that we could ask some questions regarding Southfield Road and also 12 Mile Road. If you'd like to take the front of the room. And I don't think we don't need to do your business address for the record, but if you'd like to provide it, we invited you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Petrovich. I'm with the Road Commission of Oakland County. I'm the Deputy Managing Director. And as was said, I was asked to come here to hopefully help answer some of your questions related to the Walmart that's possibly going in at 12 and Southfield. So I'm here to answer anything you'd like to know that I can answer, and if I can't answer, I certainly can get you an answer back to you, for sure.
Would you, move the mic so that...
It's not functioning right now.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay, sorry.
You're on your own.
Never mind.
Is that loud enough to hear?
Well, we record the session, so that's, but never mind. We'll continue. Council, who'd like to go first? Mr. Frazier?
Yes, I asked a question that at the last meeting, and that is that the Oakland County Road Commission and Walmart have made an arrangement to change the traffic signals and sequence of signals so that it moves traffic in a more efficient way, supposedly. My question is, what other intersection that has the same kinds of problems that we're seeing at 12 Mile and Southfield has the Road Commission used this procedure to fix, and how much difference did it make?
First of all, the intersection 12 and Southfield right now is what we call a diagonal span configuration, where the heads are diagonally across the intersection, they all hang in the middle, okay? What we're gonna change it to is a box fan configuration where the signals hang around the outside edge. Operationally, that doesn't change anything, other than, there's a slight safety improvement because the heads are more properly placed. So operationally wise, the change is gonna be, we're gonna add what we call right turn green arrows to the intersection. Right now, if you come up to the intersection, and it's red, you can't turn right on red. There's no turn on reds in all four approaches because of the accidents we've seen over the years. Well, what we'll install as part of the new installation with the box fan is these green arrows. So when the left turns, say on the 12-mile left turns are going, will allow right turns on north and southbound Southfield at the same time. So it'll allow us to get a little bit more traffic through on the right turns than we can see out there right now.
That's the only thing you're doing different?
As the traffic signal, that's the main thing we're doing different, yes.
Because at some time during the rush hour, I think that traffic is either E or F level. And my question still is, what other intersection have you used this on, and how much did it improve the traffic flow? Because if it doesn't significantly improve the traffic flow, it's really not doing much good.
Well, the intersection's an established intersection. I mean, without buying right away and knocking businesses out, you're pretty much maxed out for what you could do there. That intersection, we have an intersection out 10 Mile in Southfield as well as 13 in Southfield that were recently done with box fans and added right turn green arrows at those, and we did see a small improvement. It's not going to be, you know, something you're going to see night and day difference between traffic out there. There's no doubt about it. It's a slight improvement. The big thing on 12 in Southfield is, and without having the exact numbers in front of me, the volumes are down quite a bit out there, like they are county-wide. In the last 5 to 8 years, the economy and business and everything else is down. The intersection's running a lot less than it was, 5, 8, 10 years ago right now. There's a lot of, it's a busy intersection that's certainly challenging. We have a lot of those out there in Oakland County, but it's not operating as bad as or poorly as it was, many years ago. So there's some room for growth back into that right now.
I don't know what it could be if it runs E or F right now, and it was worse than that 5 years ago. It must have been, you had to invent new letters.
It was F for great deals of the peak periods, and during midday peaks there was a number of problems as well. It's a challenging intersection, there's no doubt about it, and it always has been, and will always be a challenging intersection. But as I said, many of our intersections have a little bit, the peak periods aren't quite as long as they used to be out there. That's just a fact of the economy and the population we're seeing right now.
Well, I do know people that have told me that they'll go 3 miles out of their way rather than go through that intersection right now. And if it's better than it was 5 years ago, I'm sure there are other questions, but that was my primary question.
Mr. Percotti?
Yeah. I've got the minutes sent to me on the Walmart in Novi, and I was reading some of the things that they're looking at because of the town center as well as Grand River and Novi Road, and coming off the expressway, the traffic that is coming off the expressway and trying to get into the town center and stopping at Grand River and Novi. Is that a greater impact there than 12 Mile and Southfield?
Well, I
or
think...
is it similar, or are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am. I think we're talking about really apples and oranges at that point.
Okay.
I mean, they knocked down an entire core of a strip mall in there to replace that with. So, I mean, if you're talking about different situations, much higher volume roads probably around that, especially Novi Road. And you've got a major mall near there, so I mean, the dynamics of the freeway interchange, I mean, the dynamics there are just much different than you're dealing with in this location here.
What would be the important thing for this council to look at as far as is if the Walmart were to go in, would be that kind of usage on that corner? What kind of impact would that have on that intersection? Do we have any idea of of a study that may either be done or whatever. In other words, adding a lane or something like that sort to alleviate traffic or whatever could be done at Edward Street and Southfield, where all the traffic is going to be coming out. I guess they're closing 2 drives on Southfield Road and just having the one drive out and in on Southfield Road and Edward Street. Does the county have any studies, impact studies on that?
Well, Walmart presented an impact study to us that we reviewed.
Yep.
And that study was also, as part of Southfield Road right now is undergoing an environmental assessment all the way from the freeway up to north of 13 Mile, which is, as we look at widening Southfield Road in the future, we need to go through an environmental assessment, which all the local cities are involved with, and we're going through public input right now on that. So we had that study also looked at by that team, who's also doing a traffic review for the whole corridor. And we looked, and we found out the traffic review they did, as well as what was submitted by Walmart, were similar in numbers, similar impacts were shown. So we saw some validation between the 2 studies. And we also had the Southfield Road consultant take a look at the Walmart study to see if, when they were looking into the future for growth, if that fit into the growth projections we had, and they thought they did. So we had another independent look, say, hey, the study looked valid, the numbers they came up with seemed valid, and so we think there's been a fair amount of, review of the situation there.
I was at the meeting Monday when the Oakland County Road Commission had the alternatives, and there was one that showed parallel parking on Southfield Road by Lathrop Village. Is that for real? I mean, I'm trying to be sarcastic, but I can't imagine somebody backing up on the Southfield Road to park.
As part of the process, we go through an environmental assessment, we take, the request from the locals involved, and there's certain local agencies that have different perspectives maybe than others do, and that's part of the process to weed out, what is good or what is bad. We'll put it out on the table so people can discuss it, and you can find out, where the, kind of popular direction is. So that was one of the requests from the village as part of the new downtown area that we're looking at, their new planning, master plan.
This environmental assessment that they're doing, how has that affected the construction of Southfield Road from U.S. 10 to 14 Mile?
How is it affecting it?
Yeah, we lost some money, I think, that was set aside to widen Southfield Road. Wasn't it supposed to be started in 14, 15 or something in there?
Parts of it were supposed to be studied, but because of the change of philosophy of some of the local areas of government and what they wanted to see in that corridor, it's caused us to take a step back, go back through the environmental process and work through its process. We haven't lost any money at this point that we had dedicated to those. It just may take us a lot longer to get there than we originally planned.
Was there money appropriated already for the widening?
Some money, yes.
What communities are affecting the construction of Southfield Road?
Well, I don't think that's, all the local
Well, the
communities
environmental
are
impact,
right.
I felt was unjustified because we were on a track to get it done, and I didn't know anybody else other than nature that threw the wrench into it, I guess.
Well,
I'm
I
trying to
think
put
we
you on a spot. I don't want to put you on a spot, but
I don't know if this is the time or place to discuss that particulars of that project and what's going on, other than that. The environmental assessment is, it's a requirement of the Federal Highway Administration.
but anyway, you did a study on 12 Mile and Southfield Road.
Right, and also number 2, as the Road Commission's perspective, we're looking at getting what we can from anything that goes in, but we have very little control of what goes in or how it goes in. There's no requirement that any private developer gives us anything, provides us anything. There's no way we can deny access to a road when they have property. It's really the local planning that has, the say over what goes on and where it goes on there. We simply try to inform and work with the developer to try and get as much as we can out of them in order to minimize the impact of that.
Partner with Oakland County Road Commission, when we do a site plan, I mean, I would hope that Oakland County would assist the community or any community in making sure that whatever roads would be provided, lights or signalization, anything else that a developer may want to do on their own, would be, at least a suggestion to them would be made, you know, through the local unit with the help of you guys to put it into the, you know, the site plan permit, you know.
And that's what happens. We certainly, we make recommendations and suggestions to what we think is the best way to do it, absolutely, but the requirement to have carried out is not, you know, we have, you know, basic requirements we have to do, but, you know, we can't force them to widen roads, and we can't force them to put things in that, you know, it's just not within our legal requirements.
Thank you very much, appreciate your comments.
Mr. Moss?
Yeah, I just have a few, if you could help us with some of the definitions, because we've been talking about the capacity of that intersection, and there's a specific increase that we should expect should the Walmart proposal come to fruition. And then we were talking about what capacity looked like maybe a decade ago. What measures go into what capacity means? What do you look at in terms of what is at capacity, and what is the number, and what measures that specific number?
Well, we take a look at the capacity of the intersection. We start with how many lanes we have out there, how many through lanes, left turn, right. We figure out how much we have in each direction, and then we take the volumes and we run it through a, you know, mostly a software program nowadays, but, you know, there's general books and guidelines we do based on how much you put into that intersection, and it kicks out a letter A, B, C, D, E, and F. You know, essentially, you know, going back to your grade school, A is good and F is bad, and there's just ranges within there of how much delay per vehicle that enters that intersection, what their average delay would be. So if I'm a normal vehicle going that intersection, how long would I typically have to wait there before I get through? And that delay that each vehicle has is what, you know, translates into a letter. And there's ranges, you know, an A may be from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. I don't have those in front of me.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a percentage, it's more, it falls into that letter category?
Right, it's a band. So technically you could be a letter E, but be a bottom E and make it, you know, or be a high E, close to a D, but you add some traffic and you're still an E, you're just in a different part of the E.
Can we get even more detailed data at all on that? Because I think that would be relevant. Like my colleague says, you know, you can't get much worse than an E unless you're going to an F, but I honestly think if we can see where in that range we are, I think that would be helpful for us in really determining what is the impact of this proposal going to be on the traffic in that area.
Well, have you been, I assumed you'd seen the traffic impact study. Have you not? I mean, if you haven't, I think that would be...
I don't know.
Mr. Crowe?
Yeah, just through the chair. That's the purpose of our January 14th meeting.
Okay.
We have a full traffic impact study, and we're going to get that stuff to you in advance. This, asking Mr. Petrovic to come here was on general, how it's currently operating and what maybe some of the potential improvements may affect it.
Okay.
And I'm a little concerned about giving you bits and pieces without giving you the full, you know, the full report which explains A through E. And I was also going to offer, you know, the Road Commission traffic engineers look at capacity of roads based on volume, based on access, based on lanes. And we as planners look at land uses, and many people don't realize that through the Institute of Traffic Engineers, they've done decades worth of study, and the average single-family home generates 9.55 trips per day. Well, we look at land use, and retail at a certain 1,000 square foot generates a certain amount of traffic. Multiple families generates a certain amount of traffic. So all those things get plugged into the formula, and as the Road Commission has stated, they look out 20 years. And they see that the potential impacts of the Walmart is in about 4 to 5% at the worst case scenario. And they've said that since the capacity of the road is down because the economy is down, there's less traffic being generated now. And as it slowly comes back, we look at that forecast and say that that's within the growth model for this entire corridor. Whether it gets developed on that corner or up the street, we anticipate based on land use values and the average traffic generated by each of those values what the potential impact is on the road.
Okay.
And we'll get into that in much more depth.
Okay. Then a lot of my questions are probably going to be saved for you, perhaps at that meeting on the 14th.
But again, what we wanted is one, to say that this has independently been reviewed, these traffic reports that we'll be giving you, and I think you said it yourself that there's concurrence that they're valid. Then you can make your own assessment on you know, what the fix is.
But in general terms, if you were driving on Southfield Road in so let's say this proposal goes forward, just in the most general terms. If you were driving on Southfield Road in 2014, the traffic would be worse than 2011 or 2010, but maybe at the same level as a decade ago. So we're kind of getting, that's what I'm hearing, and data validates and proves that.
Right, I mean, they're not going to go back and look at that. I'm telling you that from just a statement I know from the way the county's been, that everything is down everywhere. All of our volumes we've seen that we continue to take are down. So at some point in time, you know, whether it's 3, 5, 8 years ago, traffic was higher than it is now. Okay, so if you add this Walmart traffic into it, you may at some point get back to where we were a little while ago, and then eventually as we grow, we'll eventually surpass that. So there's, I mean, right now you're talking about, I think the traffic space is somewhere 3 to 4%, right, was the number of growth on a road of that size. I mean, again, we improve signal timings by 5, 8, 10%. Nobody knows the difference. So I mean, it's a number that's relatively small in the traffic world.
And through the chair, just if you could give the council perspective, what basically is the Southfield Road in this area? What is the capacity as far as volume? We know on the low end it's at 20,000 up to 90,000. It's operating around 48,000. Are those numbers valid from what you're aware of? And how much capacity does that road really have without making any improvements compared to where it is? You can just give us general numbers.
Well, I would argue you're pretty close to capacity now at times a day. I mean,
At certain times
a day. But it depends on what you want to put up with. I mean, we put up with a great deal of traffic in this county at times. I mean, the resolution to that is beyond our funding means, or politically you don't want to be taking apart buildings and, you know, widening to just wiping everything out, the reason for part of the traffic. So it's a balancing act. But there's room to grow out there, but as it grows, it's going to continue, the peak hours will continue to extend beyond where it is right now, and then the off-peaks will start to see some issues as you go. I mean, I don't think a road like that can carry any more than, before it gets awfully bad, up around 60 or 70,000, you're going to be really seeing a lot of 5-lane road.
I guess just then, I'll hold off some things waiting for the report, or we're waiting for January 14th. Just maybe some general thoughts for our planner, things to take into consideration, not just how does traffic increase on the road itself, but in and out traffic, I think is something to look at. I don't know how you measure that, or if that's taken into consideration, the actual in and out on where Edwards becomes the entrance to Walmart. Yeah, I'd like to see kind of an hours breakdown. Where is it worst on Southfield Road, and where does that match up with what time people would be shopping at this location? You know, if there's a rush hour, is that the time that people are at the peak going to Walmart? You know, because those have to match up in order for the data to really be there that says, you know, what I'm hoping it might or might not say. So,
Mr. Charette?
Yeah, we're getting global, and that's moving toward the further future discussion. But there was a specific line of questioning that came up when we decided it might be beneficial to ask you to come here. The second piece of it was there was a complaint that oftentimes a person would have to sit before light changes to make a left-hand turn, and that there was something that can be done in sequencing. Now, you've explained specifically, for example, placing the lights and having the right turn signals having a positive effect on traffic flow. What about sequencing? That was the other thing that came up, turn sequencing.
Well, and trying to understand what sequencing may be what you're asking for, but the sequencing of the signal in our terms is, you know, left turns go first, and then the through traffic goes, and then we go to the next road with the left go. That sequencing will not change. I mean, it's still going to stay the same as it is. What we saw out there relative to left turns is the worst left turn out there is eastbound, and that's really our critical movement out there. And there can be times when you sit through a number of lights to get through eastbound. This development adds 0 to that turn movement there.
Okay, but there's there's no strategy that would provide an improvement for that either.
No.
That was
There's
specific.
the only additional issue is putting the right turn green arrows up to help move right turn traffic through the intersection better.
Through the chair, just, Gary, maybe if you could just explain the SCAT system and how that adjusts based on the time of day and so forth. I think that's part of what the question is.
Currently, there is SCATs up and down Southfield Road already in all the intersections on Southfield Road. And SCATs is our signal system that runs most of the traffic signals in Oakland County. And what it does is it looks on a second-by-second basis. It's taking all the volumes coming into the intersection and decides, what's the best timing that's best for this moment in time. So a traditional traffic signal that we have, we still have 300 or 400 of them, and in the old days, it would just, we'd go out and we'd count cars, we'd sequence, we'd set a timing up for the light and it would run. And we'd have no idea what's out
We
there.
have scats in that intersection right now.
And we have scats there right now, so it's looking at the volumes and constantly adjusting. It's also looking at signals up and down the road and trying to accommodate a lot going on. And it's competing, when you get to an intersection that's got a lot of traffic at it, it's competing, with a lot of directions there. But it's trying to maximize the timing out there. And as things, so for example, if a new Walmart were to come in years ago and we didn't have it there, we'd have to go out and retime the traffic signal to adjust for this big new development that went in. We won't have to do that in this case because the traffic signal will see it itself. It'll see the volume changes. It'll see the odd times that, Walmart is going to have much more traffic probably later at night than typically is seen out there because a lot of stores aren't open. And that will automatically adjust to those changes out there and handle that as it goes.
So, if I can just interject on this subject. Right now, from my personal experience, but I don't have scientific data, there always seems to be more cars in the center turn lane on 12 Mile wanting to go north than there are in the center turn lane wanting to go south on Southfield Road.
Mm-hmm.
And so is the SCAT adjusting for the fact that more people are trying to go north at 12 Mile and Southfield than south?
Right. The way the light's sequenced right now is when east and left are going right now, if eastbound still needs more time and the westbound runs out, it'll what we call gap out the westbound, keep the eastbound left going, and then it'll bring up the eastbound throughs and start them moving. So it does some, it can, what we, in our business we call overlap. It starts sharing phases between other directions. Yes. It does do that right now, and it will continue to do that.
Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, and I'll wait until our meeting on the 14th to get a few of my questions answered. But presently, how many cars travel Southfield Road on a daily basis? Did you say 40,000? Is that both ways, or is that 9,000? 13?
That's if we put a counter down, say just south of 12 and Southfield, on Southfield Road, and it counts the number of cars going over a day, both directions.
It's about
48,000.
Wow. Do you know how many cars approximately can turn left on Southfield Road going north onto 12 Mile? Just the left, if you're taking a left off of 12 going west onto 12 Mile Road. If you're going north on
North, and you want to go west,
yes.
How many
cars can turn at that left-hand signal approximately the way it's timed out?
Well, it's always changing.
So we can get 5 cars, 10 cars, 20 cars?
It adjusts to what it needs. It could skip it completely if nobody's there to all the way up to, I'm sure what the max is in there, but it might be 15, 20 cars that you go through. It adjusts to what it sees at the intersection. So one you may see 3 or 4 cars go, next time you may see 10, 12 go through. Next time, like I said, it could be 0. It'll adjust and vary that as it sees volumes changing.
Is it in the future to Boulevard Southfield Road north of 12, or all of Southfield Road?
And that's part of the environmental assessment. I'll tell you, 5 years ago, we had boulevards with plans from the freeway up, various widths, whether it's 2 or 4 or 6 lane boulevards, various widths of the boulevard. But the environmental assessment now is going to reevaluate that and see if what's the most appropriate way to go forward now.
Because one of the items we discussed in Walmart this year was having 2 lanes on 12 Mile headed east with the ability to turn north onto 12. So
North
is
and
that
south.
north and south? Is that feasible at all for us to even discuss that? If it's possibly going to be
Um,
supervised there?
Again, without getting too far ahead of, into what their responsibilities are here, to put an extra, what we call a dual left turn lane, 2 lanes in there. I don't have the aerial in front of me right now, but I'm sure that means taking out the gas station and multiple other businesses through there. I mean, once you widen an intersection 12 feet, that intersection pretty much has buildings on every corner. So, if we widened it, if we added an extra turn lane on the north side of 12 Mile Road, a gas station on the northeast corner and the buildings next to it, because you have to widen both east and west of Southfield. You can't just do one side, because you gotta get traffic to line up going both ways. So when we move that extra 12 feet up, and you'd be into buildings and things. So, again, we as a road commission can't mandate anybody to do that. Again, you'd be forcing Walmart to buy multi-million dollars worth of real estate to do it, so.
All right, that's it, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to ask one question,
Yeah.
and that has to do with when you plug in the numbers for the traffic, and what you said was you count the cars as they go by. One of the things that may cause us to be down as far as traffic is concerned in the last few years is the economy. But Southfield is unique. We have 70,000 people that live in Southfield, but during the day, when our buildings are filled up, we have an extra 100,000 or 125,000 people coming in here. And they all close, most of them close business at 5 o'clock at night, which throws a ton of traffic on our roads, and they go up. As you look forward to figuring out the amount of traffic, that has to be part of the equation, that some of these buildings are going to get filled back up again. Hopefully all of them are going to get filled back up again and dump a traffic. It's kind of like running your faucet and then dumping a pail of water on top of it. The drain just can't handle it. So I hope you're taking a look at that too, that it's an additive to what normally you would look at as far as the smoothing of the traffic that runs through.
Absolutely, and part of that environmental assessment looked at, was looking at growth in the area, and they look at the amount of empty office space in the area and the projected, if they fill this back up. We're looking at SEMCOG, Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, has planning tools that project out to what's looking at. To be quite honest with you, we're doing a lot of these environmental assessments, and they're still showing negative volumes for the next 10, 15 years in this area. So we're trying to say, we have to take a look at that and say, well, maybe, as good as the planning tools are, maybe they're not that good, and we're at least got to show some growth. So it's a difficult time period. In the old days, we always knew traffic was growing by a little bit, and we could project out. Now when you're being told it's going down, how do you project traffic out? You can't just produce the negative all the time. So it's a challenge now that it used to be, and what that's part of looking at it, and that's why we had the consulting team for Southfield Road take a look at that impact study and say, where does this fit in? Did we account for something like this there? And they felt it was within the means of the environmental assessment and the growth that we were expecting.
Yeah, the other thing too is, and I don't have any facts, but this is more opinion, that and stories that I've heard that if Walmart moves in, or wherever Walmart moves in, they attract other businesses. So if they attract other businesses, that means more traffic is going to be brought to that corner or that intersection. So that all has to be plugged into whatever kind of a calculation you use for how wide the roads have to be.
Absolutely. And the future of the way we live and work is continues to change is another thing we have to deal with. There's more people who telecommute than ever before, so even when business comes in, it doesn't mean that there's more traffic all the time. There's more flex hours at work than there ever used to be. There's people working 410s more than there used to be. It's just a different dynamic as we get into this now, and it's just not as easily predictable as it used to be.
Okay, thanks.
How dangerous is this intersection compared to other intersections in our county?
We don't call any intersection dangerous.
How risky? How many accidents, let's say, occur compared to other accidents that could happen at other intersections?
It's one of our, and I don't have the number in front of you, but 12 and Southfield is, notorious. It's been there for decades. It's been one of our certainly one we continue to look at on a yearly basis. There's not a whole lot we can do out there at this point with what's there. It's just a matter of volume we're at it right now.
And, go ahead.
I would just say, we look at intersection safety a lot of different ways as well. How much volume goes through the intersection, the severity of the accidents that occur out there. So, again, without having the exact numbers, it's one that it's been up there for a long time. Where it's at right now, I'm not sure.
And I have no knowledge of how to measure any of this. And is there a particular trend that it's of accidents, of how cars are going in which direction at which time, or is it just kind of you take all the numbers of the incidents that could happen at an intersection and that's how you measure how, is there a trend?
I don't have those numbers. I'm trying to say there's a trend or anything. We look for trends on a yearly basis across the whole county for different things going on. So if something spikes or something looks odd, we review everything. In this case here, this intersection is what I would call a stable intersection. It's been around a long time, not a lot's changed at it. If anything, the volumes have gone down a little bit, so it generally is, it's not, it's stable. It's not going to change a whole lot right now.
The reason I ask is, and this is probably one of the most important issues surrounding the development, I think, in my mind, in certain ways. So, I'm just trying to get a sense of answers for the people who email us to say, this is a dangerous intersection, or, traffic is going to be increasing to a dramatic amount. I just want to be able to, when we talk on the 14th, have the information in front of me to answer in my own mind the answers to the questions of the residents. So that's kind of one of the things that I've heard, and just need more data to validate that. This is already a dangerous intersection. Why do we want to add more to it? But I need to be able to weigh, is a new development going to increase the trend of how the accidents are coming? So I guess that's another January 14th.
It is, and what we're looking at here is this intersection isn't necessarily going to get more dangerous out there. Okay, that's not what's going to happen out there. And I don't want to say I'm for or against the law. It's not my job. My job is to understand this. But what we ask for as traffic engineers when we're looking at this is, what can we do to make this the best we can? And getting rid of driveways, as you're probably well aware, is a huge deal. They've gotten rid of, it wasn't there, but the driveways that were there were pretty close to the intersection, very poor places to be. They're moved out to the very ends of the developments. One exit had a traffic signal, the other exits are right only onto the road. So those, from a traffic perspective, are as good as it gets. Okay, if anything, those situations will have gotten better by the way it's done. So we look at this and say, hey, this is pretty good. We're gonna get a new traffic signal with some right turn, green arrows to help us out a little bit there. We'll get box span signals, like I said, which have a slight safety improvement because it puts heads in better position. We're getting rid of some driveway access. So, for us, when we see a lot of developers come in who give us absolutely nothing and really don't care about a lot of things, they've shown at least a little interest to try and work with us to get a couple things done. And again, the volumes we're seeing and what they're showing, and we believe is fairly accurate, you're going to have a hard time seeing the difference right away. The difference at 3 or 4%, you get that fluctuation. You can get 5 to 10% in a day, just in volumes of people, various, just changes in traffic patterns and people going in sick in different jobs and you name it. So it's right now if I told you I improved the intersection by 10% with the signal timing, you'd look at me and go, you didn't do anything to it. So, it's in a range that really, it's difficult to see as a layman just looking at it, just watching it. If you just go through an intersection, it's difficult to tell. Okay.
Okay, Ms. Seymour.
Yeah, you mentioned the driveways, I think you're talking about the Colorado Road, the driveways that you said were a problem before because they were replaced. But there was no real activity except on Sunday when the church was there. So to say this is an improvement, it might be an improvement, on a schematic, but when there was no traffic there all during the week, that's the lowest impact you could possibly have. So I don't think those guys, it might be on paper, look good, but the difference is there really wasn't a negative impact because the church didn't have any real activity. There weren't volumes of people there except on Sunday. Yeah, but if you didn't have volumes of traffic,
Even one car turning left on the 12 mile there, that close to an intersection is going to be a problem. So, getting rid of those driveways that were there, and there's nothing on the site now, so certainly it's no improvement from now, but when the past, when there was there,
Times a day.
there was still.
Times a day where it wasn't just times a day.
Yeah, but it's, again, when you're that close to a major intersection, especially that eastbound left that was so heavy, it's very difficult for those people to get across that laneage in a safe manner, so.
There's no way to get through that intersection now. I cross it a lot, and I dread going up there. I just dread it. Any time of the day, it's horrendous. So, thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll ask mine. Does the road commission, when they track accidents at an intersection, do they just track them as accidents, or do they categorize them by side, broadside, or head-on, or, I mean, is there any data such as that, or is it just that there's an accident count?
Well, our first cut countywide, we just look at total number of accidents at an intersection, the volumes we're seeing, and the severity of those accidents that are occurring. If it shows up that it's higher on our list, then we'll go in and take a look. Then we'll pull all the accidents to that intersection and see if there's a trend or see if there's anything going on there that says, hey, they're all westbound rear-end accidents. When there should be a distribution across the intersection, why are half of them westbound? And then we look at that, we try to drill down into it further to see what it is. The accidents nowadays, we've got some great systems that it's all computerized, and the police are all submitting them. It used to take us 2 years to get accidents. Now we're getting them in under a month or two, so we get a lot of good data.
Is it possible you could get that data for us on this intersection?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We can go back, we can run.
I'd like to request it on behalf of the council.
Absolutely.
Categorization of the types of accidents that are held or happening or occurred at that intersection.
5 years, good?
Yeah.
Yep, we can run a 5-year accident study for that.
We appreciate it. You can get it to Mr. Crowe for us. A couple more things. Ms. Jordan mentioned a double left turn lane. And, at that intersection, currently, yes, there's a gas station and there's a secondhand, resale shop, very close to the intersection. But on the other side, there's a whole strip of land in a ditch that is, the very frontage on Southfield Road of the St. Bede's property. So there is room there, if the southbound lanes were moved over, but I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know quite how you get 2 lanes going north and then jiggle them over or whatever, but, one of the questions we asked, Walmart volunteered to us that they would, they were paying for the traffic light improvements, which I know are got to be well over $100,000, based on what we've seen the cost for traffic lights. But so, have you considered that possibility of taking more of the St. Bede property for a double left turn lane?
Again, we can't force any to do that, so we don't look at it from that
in other words,
perspective.
you're telling me then I should suggest that to Walmart?
That's between you and Walmart on that.
Or whoever goes in there.
Right, yes.
At the same token, the other suggestion I had was, and I posed this to Walmart, and they said they'd get back to us. They have not as of today. But instead of a dual left turn lane on 12 miles, you have the standard, but you have another left turn lane that just goes into the St. Bede property. In other words, it would require widening 12 miles, and I suppose now the answer is going to be the same. But really what I'm asking for you, I understand that you can't force it, that whoever the petitioner is perhaps would have to finance that. But is it, I guess my question for you is it feasible to do either one of these things? A double left turn lane going north, or the lane that's there now going north, plus another lane that would just go into the St. Bede property?
I guess I'm not entirely sure what that second option would do, or why you would do it.
Just because you have so many people trying to navigate that intersection. Particularly in the winter, traffic is backed up half a mile in the center turn lane at times. People in Cranbrook neighborhood complain that cars go through their neighborhood and over to Webster just to avoid 12 Mile and Southfield. And that's happened for, years. Trying to make exploring the possibilities to reduce the traffic congestion and to promote safety, I'm wondering if there shouldn't be a second left turn lane, kind of like I used the example of Oakland Mall on 14 Mile. There are lanes that just turn into the mall, and they're double turn lanes, and they just get that traffic right out of the way so the through traffic can keep proceeding on 12 Mile Road. And so that,
I think what you'd need to do is you would need to ask, from the process, ask them to take a look at what you're talking about, and somebody would have to draw a schematic out to look at the impacts of doing that, getting the proper, laying it out on, figuring out what does the impact of this do, how much land do we need, what's in the way of doing this, and then you'd have to say, is it feasible? Anything's feasible. I mean, with money and, you can do anything you want, but
well, my question
is
to
it
them
practical or is it wanted?
Would you do it, and would you pay for it? My question to Walmart was, would you do it, and would you pay for it?
Right, and that would
we're not paying for it.
Right.
The road commission's not going to pay for it.
Right.
But the other part of that, if Southfield is going to turn into a boulevard, I mean, is it practical to have that done if it's going to be boulevard at a later date? Saying if we make two left-hand turn lanes and, in a couple of years, we're looking at tearing up the middle of the road.
I won't live to see a median there, I'll tell you that right away. I'm serious. I mean,
I'm saying, we're
you had to be at that
something
meeting to see what you're asking and the environmental.
Right, I couldn't tell you the time frame and how that lines up. It could, it's not built, so it could never happen, or it could happen. It's not going to happen before 5 years, I can tell you that. I mean, if everything in the world went right, it would be 5 years from now before we did anything there. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
Now, just for clarification, Gary, did you say that eastbound 12 Mile Road would have no effect on a development on the northwest corner?
The way they've got it set up right now, if you're coming from the west on 12 Mile, you're going to make a left into the driveway before you get to the traffic signal. So anyone who got through that development won't get to the intersection, they'll turn in. So, and then when they leave, they can't turn left coming out of there, of that development, so they'll have to go either out the other direction, or they'll have to go, turn right on the 12 Miles. So there's no way to they'll be adding any volume to that eastbound left. With the way it's set up.
Thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions of Mr. Crowe? Well, we thank you very much for coming to our meeting tonight and answering our questions. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll look forward to hearing back from you on the accident count. Anything else that you might want to?
Absolutely, we're happy to get that to you. And as you know, we're always available to answer questions. If you need us back here again, whatever you need, we're happy to work with you through this process for sure. So we're happy to help you out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Council, I'm going to skip down to communications and recognize Larry Horowitz,
Thanks for coming, Gary.
who came tonight on crutches and asked to speak on this very topic rather than having the, Mr. Horowitz, if you would state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. And if you would give me there's a clock, I'll watch that. Thank you.
I'll give you a 15-second warning.
I see the clock. My name is Larry Horowitz. I live in what is nearly the center point of the Cranbrook subdivision. In other words, halfway between 11 and 12 and halfway between Evergreen and Southfield. My address is 30190 Westbrook Parkway. I've been a resident in that home with my family a little bit more than 25 years. So I want to give you the perspective of somebody who's had to deal with this ever oncoming building on Southfield Road between 11 and 12. I understand about the intersection. I hate that intersection. I travel 2 miles out of my way to go to Evergreen Road, to go beyond, I worked in downtown Detroit, to go beyond where I should get off, to Evergreen, to come up and turn around and come backwards to avoid Southfield and 12 miles. And that's been true years and years ago. And it's only gotten worse. While the intersection is certainly an issue, and by the way, I talked to the director of the Traffic Safety Department of the Road Commission, and they're coming out with their safety report, which is different than their volumes, somewhere in early January. So they seem to be timely for your concerns on the meeting on the 14th. They have measures that I didn't understand, but measures of what kind of accidents and what happens. But I'd like to call your attention to the question of just the congestion on Southfield Road between 11 and 12. When I moved in there, it was a congested road. Subsequent to that, the council has provided zoning variances and permissions to allow a Home Depot on Southfield Road, to allow a Target on Southfield Road. These are all a little bit north, a little bit closer to 13-mile road. And on the east side of the road, what used to be a trailer park that didn't generate much traffic now has some very nice houses there, and that added traffic. The traffic congestion on Southfield Road is horrendous. What I would urge the council to do is to be using whatever you can to resolve the problem that you already have. Adding another development, whatever that name of the development is, certainly isn't going to make life easier. It makes it somewhat worse. I'm sure there's issues of property tax value and everything else, but those of us who live in the neighborhood, we pay property taxes, and it is basically a very difficult place to live. I don't shop. My wife and I, we don't shop on Southfield Road. Why? Because to get from Southfield Road to our home, there's only one entrance to the subdivision from Southfield Road. That's Webster. If you want to get to where the old Safeway was, which now is by some other markets, the old A&P, which used to be called Safeway, but the A&P, to get from there across Southfield Road, you're taking your life in your hands. People driving through Southfield to get down to the freeway, to go east or west or wherever they want to go, can't do it. It is a very difficult congestion. To give you numbers of just the intersection numbers, what the lady told me today is that the intersection between Southfield, that Southfield 12-mile intersection, is one of the 10 busiest intersections in the entire county that's under county jurisdiction. If you add in the roads that are under the highway department jurisdiction, they're one of the 20th. So let me tell 12, which is presumably a very busy intersection, at 75,000. This had 63,000. So it's very, very burdensome it is, and it is true that people go through our subdivision to avoid Southfield and 12. And I don't really care what the traffic is overall, but when do people shop? When is the peak shopping time at all? Peak shopping time is after you get off work and you're on your way home, right? That's when people stop off and buy groceries or buy whatever they want to do. That's also when traffic is terrible. And what you're gonna do is add the nation's largest retailer and make that problem get even worse. So I would urge the council to do that. I asked to come down today before I knew that the road commission was gonna be here, because I have to go in for surgery, and I might not be able to get here in mid-January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Okay. Next on our agenda is the proposed ordinance amendment initiated by the Neighborhood Services Committee. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Ward, but before I do, just to give you a little background on this, last January of 2012, we, the Neighborhood Services Committee, at the time was Jeremy Moss, Myron Fraser, and myself, and we had received feedback from various residents that code wasn't doing enough, that we needed a stricter code, and so we discussed how to respond to these concerns. We started with a conversation with our code officers, Jerry Witkowski and Maria Calhoun, attended the meeting, and ultimately we decided that we would write a letter to each neighborhood association president asking them for feedback on current appearance codes in Southfield. We received roughly 25 responses, of which a half dozen or so said everything is fine, and then we further received suggestions on things that the council ought to consider in the way of code appearances. So through a series of meetings, we met in June, September, October, and Mr. Wood brought in proposed language amendments that we reviewed and approved. So as former chair of the Neighborhood Services Committee, we're asking tonight, reporting this to the full council, and from here I'll let Ms. Ward take over.
So there were three topics within the Neighborhood Services Committee meeting. One of those had to do with bushes and shrubbery, in particular, people not maintaining them. They kind of grow so that maybe they even block the house. It adds to maybe security concerns. It adds to a blighting kind of effect to have, this kind of instance where the trees, the brushes are just growing kind of wild. The problem with this type of thing, though, in terms of regulating height of bushes and shrubs and so forth, is that there are different types, obviously, of this vegetation. Some is supposed to, some is designed to grow taller, some is supposed to be maybe on a lower level. I did talk to and work with both Mary Carlock and Noreen Kozlowski, who are landscape architects, and both of them kind of felt really this is an area that gets really problematic in terms of trying to really regulate. So we kind of been centered on you should at least be able to, so that there is a safety and a security measure to homes, to residential homes. You should be able to get to the doorway so that if there's a call for rescue or fire or police, they should be able to get through there. The bushes and shrubs shouldn't be blocking or impeding that. And also, that there maybe aren't some areas that are so high that people could hide there so that when you come home, someone's behind the bush and they can kind of jump out at you. So the first one that you see is an amendment to section 9.50, and it would add a new subsection A, and it would basically, the language there is designed to promote that when you are looking at the front of a residential structure from the street, that the windows are unobstructed in general, you can see the windows, and there is no impediment to getting into the front of the house. And so that's what this language does. It also indicates that any kind of dead,
landscape materials must be removed so that, again, you don't have that type of a blighting effect. The second one had to do with a concern that was expressed about people taking their rubbish containers, their bags, their bundles, and kind of leaving it in the side yard. So as you drive down the street, you're seeing all this stuff situated in the side yard, and that again is not an aesthetically pleasing kind of look. So again, this ordinance amendment would now say that when you have, before you put your rubbish containers or your bundles or your bags out to the curb, they have to be kept in an area that, again, when you're viewing it from the street, they're not visible. So that means you can either put it within your garage, you could put it behind the house, you could maybe build something that would then block the view of that, but it can't be looked at and seen from the street. So that's the Section 2.6 amendment. And then the final one, and this one is just a recommendation. If council agrees to this, this one is an amendment, a proposed amendment to the zoning code. So this one would have to go back to the planning commission. Obviously, council can initiate a proposal to amend the zoning code, but we go back to the regular steps. And so if you're in favor of this one would not be able to be introduced and enacted, in a month or so. We'd have to start back out at the planning commission. But what this one does is try to address this type of situation. Have a lot of sections, particularly up in section 13, where you have carports. And so people are using the carport and taking a position that that's my garage. So they're putting things, materials, items in those carports saying that's my garage, and therefore it's enclosed and I have a right to do that. Obviously, outside storage, if you put it within a garage, that's not outside storage anymore. Our problem with this type of an effect is that it's not an enclosed structure. You may be using that for purposes of a garage in terms of you park your car there, but it is not enclosed. So the proposal here would be to amend the definition of garage within the zoning code and say that a garage is a structure that's enclosed on all sides by walls which extend the full height of the structure. And that way, people with carports, you couldn't just put materials out there. Again, it's a blighting kind of effect. Obviously, if council was so inclined and we go back to planning and this thing eventually comes back as an amendment to the council, if it passes, we would, go through a notice procedure with people so that, they know now the ordinance has changed and you can no longer do this. So those would be the three proposed amendments that were discussed with neighborhood services, and obviously any changes or modifications that council would be interested in, we could make.
Talk about each one of them?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Why don't we start with churches? And our Mr. Moss?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an overview. I think you had mentioned it, but just the emphasis was that this was citizen-driven, and there were some things that we ran by the city attorney, deputy city attorney, that you couldn't tackle just because there are things that, you can't govern over. But so these were the ones that were most practical and citizen-driven. So obviously, we did a lot of investigative work and presented that to the council.
Ms. Seymour?
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I don't like to see, I think it's a safety issue to have bushes that grow up in front of the windows. If someone were in trouble inside, someone broke into the house, or even if there was a fire, or someone passed out, we have no way to know where they, and hiding behind bushes is a very serious threat to people. So I think, it's one thing to be unkempt and look bad, but the safety issue to me is extremely important. I think that's a good move.
If I could just add here, this is an extreme example, but the Lathrop Mansion fire, they had allowed, the family had allowed all this vegetation, they had no lawn anymore, and our fire department, when it responded to that fire in June of 2010, spent the first critical 20 minutes, half hour, just clearing the vegetation so they could bring the equipment to the house. Now that's an extreme example, but what actually occurred. Mr. Percotti?
I was just saying, that's probably the Lathrop house, and that was,
Right.
that was vacated, and so it was overgrown and ready for condemnation back then. But, you know, I agree with you, something has to happen to make the neighborhoods look, not neglected, I'd say, and, you know, if that was next door to me, I'd probably go talk to that neighbor and see if I could maybe help him. Probably I'd go cut his grass for him. But, you know, I mean, where does government, intervene in a private home, when the public itself is not, involved? In other words, you're talking about safety to the homeowner. If you cut those bushes down and they had drapes or Venetian blinds in the window, you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. And you know, and trimming, you know, we've talked about bushes by driveways or by sidewalks, or you have vehicles backing up, or you have bicycles, and people walking. I think we just don't market, you know, we have great code enforcement, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we have to find out what the problem is. Maybe they need help in landscaping, and then again, you know, as far as the carports, you know, that may be grandfathered in anyway. That, you know, I guess I've been around a little while, but, you know, back in the late 50s, those homes that you see with carports were reasonably priced in that garage because young Jewish families that were looking for, you know, a good buy bought those homes, and also in the area between Roseland, Nice Sim School, with the big ranches, and they don't even have garages. And so, you know, what was built back then and what is now a problem, you know, we look at things differently. People put their baby carriage underneath the roof so that it didn't get wet. It was a different way of living than we say, well, we don't want to see outside storage from the street. Commercial, when we see a site plan, we have it all, you know, enclosed so that we don't see the garbage. And I don't know if this is all grandfathered in, where you can go to somebody and say, okay, now we want you to spend money and close up all four sides of a garage.
They would not be required to do that. They would not be required to do that.
They'd have to take everything out of there.
Well, right, it's outside storage. I mean, that would be my opinion still, is that it's outside storage. If it can be viewed, it's outside storage.
Well, do we have anything that says that you cannot have a container inside your house? I mean, we're looking at waste management. We're talking about having 3 of those suckers in here, you know. And people don't use their side yard, they use their backyards. Most of them may have a finished backyard and do use their side yards, which they don't view from the backyard, they don't view from the front yard. That's why they have this in the side yard. And some people have built a fence, little fence, along the sidewalk on the side of their garages where you can't see the garbage things. But, I mean, I fully agree, you know, it is not a good look in anybody's eyes, but I don't know if it should be ticketed. How would you protect yourself from telling a person that you have to cut? Now, grass we can control because noxious weeds, but how can you force somebody to go in there and cut their bushes?
We require grass to be cut, has nothing to do with noxious weeds. Grass in and of itself has to be cut.
Is there a height?
There is a height, but it's the same thing. That's an aesthetic kind of lighting issue. This is more designed as a safety measure. It's designed so that people, if they're breaking into that house, can't be
Is that
seen.
my problem or yours?
Well, I think it's a city issue,
Why?
because people, you don't wanna encourage people to break in.
If I don't care about it, why should you?
Well, wouldn't be the same argument on grass. If I want my grass to be 2 feet, why are you telling me I can only have it 8 inches?
No, that's a difference, ours is an apple.
You know, I mean, I'm not, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, in these days when we have so many foreclosures and things, you know, I know that we have to deal with this somehow. And I agree with trying to put through an ordinance and see what flies. I'm just saying, is, you know, there's one picture there with in front of a foul.
Mhm.
Now that is equipment storage, you know, but the person's things, I don't know, barbecue,
There are houses with couches.
yeah, I understand that, but don't forget you had some people who lived on Lasher Road, that the garages were the rec room.
Yeah.
I mean, there were refrigerators in there, stoves in there,
TVs.
they lived, I mean, you guys on Lasher Road, and they lived in that thing, so even if you had 3 sides enclosed, the garage door is open, I mean, how are you gonna say everybody's garage door has to be closed if you see from the street? I mean, I'm just asking questions, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, so I'm just
I
trying
can
to
tell you
question
in
out
some
my
condominium
thoughts.
associations, garage doors have to be closed.
See, we don't even have a association anymore, that thing has been,
Sid, are we missing that?
Yeah, one word, privacy. If I own that house, I can be asked to cut the bushes and make it nice. But you can't eliminate them. That's a privacy matter. You're interfering with the private home and private living and everything. I wouldn't want bushes in front of my window, as I did when I lived on Woodgate. I don't want anyone to tell me what type of landscaping I should put in my house or in front of the house. All right, I see these carports should be grandfathered in, and people keep their baby carriages there. So what? Who complained about a baby carriage not being kept there? The person who don't have babies or something?
let me just say this, let me just tell you, my next door neighbor had 2 young children. He kept that little two-seater, and they took it, put it on the porch, and subdivision so-called president went up to them and pounded on their door and told them that they couldn't keep that on the porch.
Why not?
Well, I'm just trying to say, and these people end up seeing they were harassed and actually moved. They actually, they just moved out. I don't know if they rented or they bought, I don't even know where they moved to, but they got mad and moved out. And they were nice neighbors.
Well, not everybody can do that.
They went to public schools.
Why not just have something to tell them to beautify your property? Okay, we have that now, don't we? The beautification. Let's stop getting into the business of people who live here. There are things to do it without upsetting them and making them move and getting them angry and...
Remember, these came about because residents had kind of expressed these kind of
Well,
concerns.
you know what residents do.
So, I,
Half the time they tell you they're a witness someplace and they're wrong.
Mhm.
You don't know.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, if I had to live next to that, I'd be very upset. I mean, I understand that.
You
I
go
just
in
don't
and tell
know
them and talk with them.
how to get that done. And,
That's a code issue too.
well, but,
This is
but-
empowering code to
yeah,
do
that's
that.
the problem. If you have nothing to point to, code can't go out and say you have to do anything. Unless there's an ordinance, they can only enforce the ordinances that are on the books. So that's,
I wouldn't vote for an ordinance to cut bushes away from the front of the house, the window.
okay.
You're invading their privacy.
see, I don't even know if those are slab houses up there. Anybody know? I think those are slabs,
Yeah,
but
Some of them are.
because I know they were going for like $8,900 when they were featured back then.
Mayor Lawrence?
I'm constantly engaged in conversation on code enforcement, and we have a responsibility to this community to keep it vibrant and desirable to live in. And if we had a whole street of carport homes with storage like this there, if someone wanted to buy a house in that community, they would not view it as being a vibrant community that they would want to live in.
I'm only talking about baby carriages. I'm not talking about ash cans which belong in the back. That's a different story.
I'm talking about with the back.
Okay. It's junk. You're right in there. It's junk, but you
I
have
like
to
the
mention
baby
it's
carriage.
junk.
I like the baby carriage.
You have to differentiate now. Now, what if you have a swing seat?
I think that's nice.
Mayor Lawrence.
But the issue is that we have to, some of our ordinances are not as stringent as some communities that we go to every day and find them very desirable and very attractive. There are communities that have color selections that you can paint your house. There are communities that say that you cannot do a lot of things. But we must use every tool, I feel strongly, every tool we can to keep our community vibrant. There are people, and we know we've had individuals move to our city, and they come from cities that don't have codes. And what is the vacant car? You know, that this is my property act. So what if it isn't running? I can leave my car here. You can't tell me that. But we have an ordinance that if your car does not drive, you do not have a license on it, you cannot store your car in an open space. Put it in your garage and close your door. You can keep as many as you want. I think I know for a fact. I've had many neighbors or residents have said, thank you for that. Because some people will store 6 cars in a yard.
You're not talking about the amendment to the ordinance. You're talking about something else.
I think the carport is right on target. The garbage and things on the side of the homes, if you're driving down the street and on the side of every home there, some people do not use trash containers, some just use garbage bags. And I've seen people just pile up garbage bags. That's a rodent issue. It is unsightly, and if I have to, in the summertime, it is not desirable at all, and I support that. The only concern I have, and I agree with you, I do have some concerns about the bushes. And mine so much is not the height as it is the manicured look. Can you turn back to some of those bushes? Like, can you go back one more? Like here. I don't really have a problem with those, but it's not manicured. It's just growing wild. And I don't know how to get past a manicured look to just growing wild. And it's obvious that he just haven't done anything to it. I'm sure some of those are not even shrubs. So how do you, I think that an in-row would be, and I think that we should have, now that, I mean, come on.
That's a vacant house.
Well, the very last slide. That is a weed tree, a mulberry, that's grown up in the bushes, and this house has looked like this for years, and to me, and this is what we heard from the residents, it's about property values. You talk to somebody like Dale Miller in Twickenham, who says, you know, we're just so frustrated with some of the people that are not maintaining their homes. It makes us want to give up and just leave. And we heard that over and over again from the people who were really exercised about this, and it wasn't one or two. It was a good 15, 16 presidents that responded.
Mr. President, if I could, even with what we're proposing here, this house would be in compliance because you do have a clear front walkway to the front door. And the front windows that I mean, it's not totally obstructed, but that's a tree. And we have trees.
To me, that's not a Southfield standard, but then.
I agree, but this ordinance,
My
to
yard doesn't
me,
look like that.
That's the problem, because some people, and this is what we kind of went round and round about, some people like kind of the more wild look of the landscaping. Some like it perfectly manicured.
and some people want their windows covered.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Some people like so that the sun is shaded
Yeah.
out and.
So how do you regulate?
Well, and that is this, I'll tell you, this is a very, very difficult, type of thing to try to regulate, because it is, so much of it is aesthetics and personal, you know, likings of the homeowner. What do they like? But on the other hand, there's an interest in terms of the aesthetics and of the neighborhood. And so, by going to this, at least in terms of saying that, you know, the windows have to be unobstructed and you have to be able to get to the doorway, we were hoping to get at least some minimal kind
Some
of,
minimum.
that these would have to be trimmed.
Okay. So establish an ordinance where it has to be trimmed a certain height, a certain area, essentially.
Yes, I just want to say the garbage on the side of the house, placing it within your garage or in the back where it's not seen, to me, is a good ordinance. But I'm still struggling with the first one of how we can do that. And I don't think that the carport should be grandfathered or anything else. If you want to keep certain items in there, and that's because I've walked this whole city, there's some carports where they build shelving in there so that they can organize storage. I've seen some where they've actually put a back in the back of the carport and put shelves there. And so there is a way, and you know, you can buy storage to put in there so it's not unsightly. So no one is saying what you should do, but what we're saying, it shouldn't be debris and it shouldn't be undesired. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, what this does is, as with anything that's on our code, allows code enforcement to use their discretion to initiate a conversation. Right now, code enforcement isn't empowered to go up to a neighbor and say, hey, nobody likes your bushes, or nobody likes your storage on the side of your house. What this does is allows the conversation to take place, because that conversation can't take place right now. So it's not about just issuing tickets and having demands all throughout the city, driving around looking for, outdoor storage just to write a ticket. It's allowing code enforcement to initiate discussion within neighborhoods. These neighborhood association presidents wrote to us and said, essentially, we want to keep the peace in our neighborhood. We want the city to kind of act as an intermediary so there isn't this resident-to-resident conflict of someone banging up on the porch and saying, your baby carriage isn't appropriate. But it's allowing the city to actually be empowered to go up and initiate those discussions on the neighborhood's behalf. So that's why it's not just about blanket ticket issuing, it's about keeping the standard and now giving us something to empower us to keep that standard.
It's still a privacy issue.
Mr. Prakash.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's being seen. I agree with everything. I just don't know, I think it's something that you have to put out there and see if it's tested, but, and try to, to me, it's all in marketing and neighborly contacts, but, you get the same thing with your side yards. And they have side yards facing streets, and you got things going on in the backyard that all messed up too. And so what are we gonna force people to put up fences? If they side a major street, you're gonna have to put up a 6-foot-high wall, so I don't have to look at your backyard. I know this neighborhood on 12 Mile Grayfield very well, and that's a dump. The first houses they try to build in there are colonials, nice houses, I think there's 3 or 4, and then after that's in the Vandenberg area. And if you drive down Edward Street, even right across from the school, you have some nice, well-kept houses. But you go down on Brentwood, Fairfax, and go where these houses were built in the 50s, between the houses, it's not just one house, it's all of them are like that. All of them. And I bet you 90% of them are like that. and our streets in that neighborhood reflect the houses. I mean, there are asphalt over concrete, it's spilled me like coffee when I go through the intersection of Edwards and Fairfax or Brentwood. And, I mean, the infrastructure itself is bad. I mean, so, you know, somebody say, well, why don't you guys do your street? Why don't you fix that cracked road that's, you know, bumping all over the place? So, you know, I mean, I think we have to look at all our neighborhoods, and take section by section, just go through that neighborhood and do a real fact-finding on how to bring it up to a standard. And if it's meeting with the people, and if they don't, you know, then you have to take action. But, you know, like rentals, for example, we don't have a real accurate count of rentals. And yet rentals, we can hit them hard and make sure that all these rentals comply with these rules, because you have to have a license. I think, I mean, I'm willing to try it. I'm willing to try it and see what happens, but I mean, I really think that we have to look at a strategy and take section by section and go through them and try to bring them up to a standard of what we think, and make sure that subdivisions are organized again, and to be done by section until we can get through the whole city. Because I think by just hopping around and getting, you know, these one particular things taken care of, you know, and I know, well, you know, these houses were built like Oak Park. I was going to drive over to Oak Park. These are the models that were in Oak Park, some of the little ranches up there, to see how what they're doing in theirs, because they supposedly are pretty stuck with their ordinances. But anyway, I'm willing to go along with it and see where it goes. But I just think, you know, like the containers, you know, we're going to be looking at waste management. You're going to have three of those different colors.
Why don't we take one of these three at a time, so that we can keep this
I think I'm
growing?
either one, am I?
But Ms. Jordan?
Presidents are looking out in the neighborhood, and they have their thoughts directly on what's happening in their neighborhood, and so they've seen all of these bushes growing up, and they've seen, you know, the garbage cans on the side of the street, and I think it's incumbent upon us to act on what the citizens are saying is what's happening in the neighborhood. And based on the review by the neighborhood committee, I think we should move forward. There's going to be a time for compliance.
Yeah.
So we're not going to penalize.
Right, and certainly code enforcement always discusses first. I mean, that's is to talk to people about the aesthetics of the neighborhood and keeping the neighborhood appearance up. So, you know, again, just as Mr. Moss indicated, this is just a way for them to be able to talk to them and say, you know, the ordinance requires it, what can we, I mean, if they need assistance, we've got programs, so it gives us a starting point.
And I think we've got to become aggressive. We've kind of let things go, which is why we're at this point. So I think at some point, and I believe it's now, that we've got to start moving. And if we get, you know, some of the citizens start complaining, then maybe we can look at it a different way. But for now, I think we need to get moving and begin to act. We've waited long enough.
The other thing that will happen is on vacant or foreclosed homes, we'll be chatting with the banks. So that we have something to work with else when you're dealing with financial institutions.
I'm in favor of all three.
Just a point of clarification, code department was at every one of the neighborhood services meetings, as was the building department. The list, again, as Jeremy said, the list was considerably longer, but this is what code said we need the teeth for this. Our own staff is telling us this. So, Myron?
Well, let me ask,
Yeah.
Jim, how would we would notify, the properties that are owned by the same?
Yeah, we have, and with the standard, we say, that this is what needs to be done, and we would work with them, and it would be their responsibility, their financial responsibility.
Thank you.
Mr. Craig?
Yes, you know, I sat on the neighborhood services subcommittee, so I was involved in this. And one thing about it is, people complain that government can be heavy-handed and make a lot of rules, and without the feeling of what the people need or want. But when the citizens come to us and say, we would like some tools to work with, what we were trying to do is work in cooperation with the people that came to us and give them not only the code enforcement, but the neighborhood associations themselves some tools to work with. And I know in our neighborhood, there are times when they use these rules to talk to people, but it's easier to do that when you have something in your hand that says, here are the standards that the city has agreed to, and we want you to work with it. But in addition, I think the bushes and trees is a safety issue. And one of the things that may happen is, if there's an emergency in that home and the bushes are grown over the door, for the EMS folks to try and get a gurney in the door and get back out again, it's going to delay, and who knows what a 5-minute delay is going to make, the difference is going to make with someone that, you know, has a serious illness or even worse. So, you know, I'm very supportive. I was part of this. We hashed it out and we came up with this, and I think this is probably as even-handed as we possibly could be, and yet maintain the standards of what we want our community to look like. And I can also tell you that on a regular basis, my wife says to me, this is not the community that we moved into. And I think she holds me single-handedly responsible. What's the council doing to make sure that, you know. But if you do look around, there are some pretty dog-eared areas in our community that need to be brought up. If we're going to be the engine that turns Oakland County around, then we all need to work together hand in hand to bring it up to the standard that makes it the place that people want to move into rather than move out of. And if you look if you read the papers over the last few weeks, and the Eccentric over the weekend talked about Royal Oak and what Royal Oak is doing with their downtown, and you know, they're going to extend it another couple of blocks by bringing in a hotel, six-story hotel with a parking ramp and some mixed use, and if we don't, you know, get on our horse and get moving, we're going to get left in the dust. And this is a piece of it. So I'm supportive of this, and all three of them, in fact. But the bushes one seemed to be the most discussed.
Thank you. Before I start this question, this looks like a tree overgrowing an evergreen.
Yeah,
Is that?
but it's leaning over out of the,
Yeah, I mean, there's an evergreen
the
behind
roots
it.
behind it.
Grew out of it, yeah. I mean, this, I don't want to see people get sick of this, and I don't want to see a hardship presented to people that are already having a hardship. But some of our neighborhoods just look seedy, and they need help. We need to be able to get these people, start that conversation. As Sue mentioned, we have assistance that we can provide when people can't take care of their property. We have programs and volunteers that will do stuff with them.
Chore, parks and gardens.
Right. But we have the chore, we have those services that, I think it's essential, because some of the areas have looked, Fairfax North just below 12 miles. You've got homes that people, they don't seem to realize they think you've got 10 acres and nobody lives around the neighborhood, and there's trash all over, and, you know, they don't move stuff that's been sitting there for probably years, and it's not good for our city. I don't want to see people be put in a position of further hardship by getting tickets, and I think we've all agreed to that. But we've got to have a way of dealing with it, because we can't let the neighborhoods go down. We just can't do it. And safety, I agree with those that said safety on the bushes issues. I do think that an overgrown look is not a good look in any neighborhood, and the safety issue does have to be considered. So I am in support of it.
Mr. Lamb?
I have never seen a front door of a house in Southfield, I've been around a long time, that is blocked by bushes or trees to get into the front house, the front door.
I have.
Okay,
I have.
you have.
I have.
Yeah, definitely.
I have to.
Actually blocking the
Yeah.
front door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have never seen.
They must use the garage entrance and they just neglect the front door. Absolutely.
I've
What
seen
area?
it.
What area?
All over the city.
I
The
haven't
pockets,
seen, come
the
on.
pockets.
I'm not making this up.
They're not blind?
They must
I
use
look-
they must use their garage door entrance to go in and out of their house and leave the whole front area
Now,
unkempt.
I'm gonna make it my business.
We'll go on a tour.
Okay.
It's a deal.
You show for me.
Done deal. Let's do it.
Now the garbage cans. My daughter lives on Jeanette, and she keeps the garbage cans on the side of the house, but there's a fence and a door, and it covers it. You don't know the garbage cans are there.
That's fine.
That would be an easier,
Yeah.
something into the amendment. But putting a fence around and put that under the fences and all that.
As long as it's not visible, right, as long as it's not visible from the street, from the front, she's fine.
No, it's not visible.
Right, she's fine.
But if we can put that into an amendment, it's easier. I think the people will do that quicker.
I think, Mr. Lance, the garbage cans are one thing, neat, and the lids on them, and the...
Well, that's part of the rubbish. It's part of everything.
It's
isn't
all
it?
that other stuff that gets left on the side of houses, and you've seen pictures of it. It's unkempt.
You can never stop them. The kids have their automobiles and their toys. You can't stop that. You're gonna go to every house and tell them, hey, oh, this is trash and junk. You can't have it there? Come on.
I think you can.
Is that what you wanna do?
Yep.
Knock on the door, tell them, get your kids'
Our
toys
code department
away.
wants to do this.
Huh?
Our code department wants to do this.
Well, let them go and try and do it.
Well, we need to give them a fee. Ms. Ford, where do we go from here? One I know has to go, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to
Well, I
speak?
wouldn't bother anybody in reference to taking that type of trash away. You call it trash,
Okay.
it's not.
Mr. Perkowski,
I just wish that I was only gonna see photos up there, because, you know, these are streets that you don't drive by, and people who come past the community don't necessarily see. But we have a house on Monterey and 12 Mile Road, next to the synagogue. And that thing is the worst eyesore you've ever seen in your life.
One on the north side of the street?
Yes. And now they're over there, guys who are now scavenging the wood, cutting trees down, and taking the wood for the fireplaces. And they've already stripped the siding off.
It's vacant?
It's been vacant since last spring, I think, wasn't it? Coach, the guy was some kind of mental problem or something, and I guess it's one of those long lots, 1,200 feet long. I guess the heirs are trying to sell it to the synagogue, but somebody's got to be held responsible. If it belongs to the church or synagogue or school, then tell them to tear that down. I don't care if they got an option on it or not. And if a person who is not able to do that, the heirs don't live around here, tell them to tear the sucker down. But everybody lines up at the Lasher 12 Mile Road light, and they sit there and they just look at the sucker standing there, and they can't understand it.
well, we'll refer that to
And-
those, but...
Yeah, but what I'm
to
trying
get
to
back
say is,
to
these
real
are minor
life.
compared.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that is that when we get through, take care of the real serious things, then we can maybe look at some of these things that are not as serious. I don't know, I mean, I know that there's ticketing, and then you gotta go through the court, and I looked at, you know, some of the houses we have tore down, how long it's taken to go through the system, but you know, I mean, I guess I've been around too long. Years ago, we used to set them on fire. I mean, we had fire. Come on, Raleigh.
I want to get back.
No, we used to have experiments with the fire department, get permission,
I'm looking at the time.
you know, to do a fire thing. Training program, and get rid of them.
Okay.
you know.
I want to get to Ms. Ward. Our next steps would be,
Well, if there was consensus, then we would put this on, we could put any of them on, either the first two on a next regular meeting for introduction, and the third one, if there was consensus on that, we would send, you could refer that to the planning commission to
Okay.
take that one up.
all right. So, we're looking for consensus?
Yes.
Not yet.
Yes.
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 I vote yes.
So, do you want these in January with those schedules, or would you rather that I wait till February?
I think we could do this probably on, we could do this under consent, couldn't we? The two, and then the one would
We
go
don't
back.
usually do an ordinance
Okay,
introduction
then we'll wait
for
till,
consent.
February,
That's
because
the first-
January.
Yeah, right, okay, so February, we'll put these on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
And the one goes back to
And then you're referring the third to planning.
right, okay. All right, moving on. We have, and I've been concentrating this on it. Could we have quiet in the back? We touched on this conversation in August when we discussed coasting the baseline, that project. And we talked about public art. And then it came up again in October, and we had a lengthy discussion, and there was consensus at the time, as Ms. Seymour will remember. We had consensus around the room that, yeah, we really should work on public art. And Mr. Lance had suggested that we all write an essay, as I recall. I didn't write an essay, but this was in October. It was your suggestion?
Yeah.
I did not write an essay, but I wrote an outline. And it's just a starting point for hopefully something something bigger.
Well, if there's gonna be any essay, why is it art?
Yeah,
Why is it considered art?
it was on a public arts commission. Okay, so that's the topic we're on right now.
Good line.
Okay, so, at any rate, this is just, I put something out there, from that discussion. I remember Mr. Frazier saying, had some concerns about, the discussion was going one way, but then we brought in other topics such as, when we used to have theater, or the orchestra, or dance, or, art shows. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Frazier, but you were concerned that it was too broad. So, the purpose of this is to, exactly what it says, get art out in the community, not just on this site, but all over the community. And some examples that I would cite, for instance, in Detroit, they have marked the Midtown neighborhood. I don't know if you've noticed. Midtown Detroit has the signs, and they're red with the roof lines of various buildings. It's very effective. Chicago does this with all of its neighborhoods. I also, in doing research for this, some really exciting things. In Chicago, every development that's over $5 million, they require, by ordinance, a set-aside for public art. 1.33% of the project. San Diego, 2%. This might be something, not tonight, but other communities that are further along on this, with the Public Art Commission, these are the kinds of things that they're doing, and it's really exciting. And if a developer says, I don't want to incorporate public art in my project, then the money goes to the Public Art Commission fund. It's how, we should be so lucky that we get a $5 million project coming. But at any rate, this is a way to try and start that discussion and get a citizen panel that I would envision going after Michigan Council for the Arts grant. If you've been downtown Ferndale, they're all the statuary now on 9 Mile, or sculptures on 9 Mile and on the Woodward median. And I want Don to remind me of a conversation we had with the Road Commission about Telegraph. But I talked to the DDA director in Ferndale. It's all rented. Minimal expense. They rent, each piece is rented for $500 a year. Anything happens to it, the artists are insured. It's the John Sovey Foundation. Dearborn, Plymouth, Northville are using the Midwest Sculpture Initiative, and they're doing the same thing. They're renting statuary, which people can buy off the street, the way they work it, or the community can buy it through fundraising or grants or whatever. So there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. I'm talking kind of fast, but this would be the starting, this wouldn't be something council would do. We would appoint a citizens committee with representatives of our arts community, people who are in the business of art, gallery owners, architects, designers, that sort of thing, to help secure public art for Southfield. And again, I want to stress, it's not just about the Civic Center. It would be a community-wide effort where we have public spaces. And I think one last note, and I'll call him Seymour. We have a piece of public art down at Barbara's Woods that's from the 80s. It's a metal and wood sculpture. And the lawn mowing crew has pushed it right to the edge of the woods, and the wood part of the sculpture has rotted. And I look at that every day I go by on 9 Mile, and I think that's what used to be. We used to have much more art in our community, and that deteriorating sculpture, personally, it nags at me. That
9 Mile and what?
9 Mile at Barbara's Woods, right on the lawn.
Ever been in there now?
Okay.
Nagging at me now.
Yeah. Anyhow, let's do more.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. A lot of questions came up in as I was looking over this list. I'm going to start with the smallest part, and that is I gathered from reading this outline that we were talking about entranceways to, you were talking about neighborhoods. Is there something about entranceways to certain neighborhoods? Was that?
It could be right out here, City Center District.
I don't mean that. I'm talking about neighborhoods. Commercial areas, to me, are very separate from neighborhoods, and we promote community identity through public art for Southfield's neighborhoods. Are you talking about entrance markers?
I just saw neighborhoods in cities that do this. They have
residential neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Really?
Seattle, Capitol Hill neighborhood has the logo, and it's residential. I've seen it across the country.
Okay. My first thought was, I know a lot of this came out of the Grand Rapids experience, and I thought, we don't have an Amway, we don't have billionaires willing to give us all this money to do a lot of art. I've always thought there are appropriate places to put public art. I think, it doesn't have to be here. It should be something in the city center. It should be in certain intersections. But I wonder, we're all going to, when we go to businesses for money, we're all going to the same people. how are funds going to be raised? You mentioned rental, which sounds like a practical solution to this. And the other thing was, you know, we have a cultural arts division in Parks and Recreation. And Mary Carlock has done public exhibits of public art, sculptures over on Central Park Boulevard and the plaza. It's been a long time, but there were those things were done, where art was put out, loaned things that were loaned, and they were on exhibit in the nice weather for a long period of time. So I'm thinking of that, and I'm thinking that I don't know that I want to get outside of having it be controlled by the Cultural Arts Division of Parks and Rec. That's one thing. But paying for this is, you know, that's a big decision, big consideration, and it does concern me that we're all going to the same businesses trying to get things like Carpenter Lake done, different projects that we have, and these times, as a city, we're just trying to survive, so I wonder if we're not asking too much of our business community and those that we would expect to or want to contribute to this.
Okay. I think Mr. Moss is next. Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm absolutely in favor of empowering a commission to do all this. There's an article that just in the last couple of days has been going kind of viral on Facebook, just with all the stuff that's been going on in Lansing that we've heard about. And so I printed it out just because I was reading it in and of itself and found it so fitting to this item of our agenda. It's from Brian Dickerson in the Free Press. And the headline is "Scaring Away the Grads Michigan Needs to Woo." And it's, I recommend reading it in whole, but there's this one point that I totally identify with in it that says the Great Lakes state being ridiculed on The Daily Show and CNN is an insular, backward-looking place, suspicious of newcomers and new ideas, a state whose elected officials are busily erecting new obstacles to contraception, same-sex marriage and voting, and new opportunities for people to open for-profit prisons, hunt wolves, or pack heat in church. Really, lawmakers, is there something that you're not doing to make young college graduates feel unwelcome? How about raising the age of consent to 35 or booking Lawrence Welk tribute bands at the Palace? So I don't want to offend anyone who's a Lawrence Welk fan in the audience, but it hits the nail on the head. About the struggle that Michigan communities are having to stay competitive with areas that have kind of cool things going on. And so our struggle in Southfield is going to be expanding ourselves as just a place on the map to becoming a place of interest on the map. So I have a friend, and so this totally falls into it, I think. It excites me as a possibility. I have a friend who's a flutist in Oak Park, and he's about my age, and he was just appointed to the Oak Park Arts Commission. And it was just last month, and he's already having planned a holiday flute concert that's coming up this Wednesday, just having been on there for a month. So, the idea that, this is going to cost money, or this is going to be, we're in too much over our head, just in a month, he's planned his own event, having been placed on the board, on the commission. So, you start small and you build, but you have to start somewhere. And so I think that for us, this is a critical piece of a huge puzzle to creating Southfield as a place that's kind of unique, has its own sense of culture, and in terms of cost, that's up for the commissioners on the commission to decide how to tackle some of these big projects and reach out. I'm speaking from a little bit of a 20,000-foot perspective looking down, but also speaking as a council member, speaking as a young person, speaking as a concerned resident who thinks that we have a long way to go, but this is a step toward getting there, toward becoming kind of a real interesting city to be a part of.
Yeah. I think that we've had, this repeats itself, we've had a arts council once before. Bruce Schmidt was here and ran it, and Mrs. Hollinger was involved in it. And I think that we should look into having a commission that it would be spelled out what the members' art interest would be. So in other words, if it was outdoor art or symphonies or whatever. So in other words, not to put individuals on it that were not basically interested in moving forward with that. And my suggestion also would be that the board report back to council to approve what their recommendation would be. When I was having discussions with MDOT on Telegraph Road median, having my wars with them, I always learned to have a fight and make up and ask for something. And so they said we could get a permit on Telegraph Road. They need a certain amount of space from the curbs, or the middle of the medians we could use for art. And it's all you have to do is get a permit to do so. And my thoughts were from years ago that we would get the corporate people who front on Telegraph Road, when we have our technology corridor, that like the Lears, that they would take in front of their building and we'd put a pad with lighting available, and they would bring in a piece of art. Either they would rent it, lease it, own it, whatever it be. And Mr. Silverman, who is been on the State Arts Council, has got an office, and he's the one who has one that has become famous, is the barn fence that sits up in Farmington Hills. It looks like it's falling down, that Farmington Hills wanted to get rid of, because they said it wasn't art. And I said, I'll take it for the Telegraph Road. But anyway, we have a piece of art that was left over, that was given to the city back in the Civic Center here on the hill, that was from our outdoor arts thing, and we just kind of got away from the things that we have done that really have been creative. For example, way back we got Marshall Fredericks, and I think her first name was Bunny. Do you remember her? Bunny was on the state board, Arts Council. Anyways, and
It was Holland, Marty Holland.
yeah, but Bunny's one who brought the outdoor sculpture here, along with what's the call? She just passed away.
Marla Ballinger.
She just passed away. She's up in
Marla
Roger City.
Ballinger.
Yeah.
Marla
But
Ballinger.
Marla Ballinger was working with the state commission to bring that arts thing here, and it was a great event. I think sometimes we can look back and say, what kinds of things we had. We had an arts fair out here on the grounds, and when we built the largest sundae at the pool, it hit the Guinness World Record, during that arts festival that we had. We had paintings all over and tents all over this area back of us, side of us here. So I would be tickled pink to see some of that come back. I drove through Plymouth last night, and you're not always going to get something that really you like. I guess I had a hard feeling with it in light of what happened in Connecticut. But they put, when a youth dies for whatever reason, mostly they told me it was drugs, they put a Christmas tree in the park and it's decorated. They have in this park all these Christmas trees, and I said, that's not my taste, but they did it. They're all lit up. The whole downtown is lit up. So that was their thing. Then of course they have the ice sculpture coming up. That's in January. If we ever get snow or cold weather. But so the little towns are really. So you don't have to be a Royal Oak is what I'm getting at. Small towns have those specific things that they come up with, and it becomes a little notoriety to their city, and Holly has their thing, and we really should go beyond having a carnival in front lawn. That's my opinion. If there's a standard, we gotta kind of increase all our standards. But anyway, but I think that we should go forward to at least have something produced that would spell out what I said, you know, you form a committee and have those that are qualified to be on it, and they make recommendations to council and go forward with that and get this thing going, because, I think, pulling the permit for Telegraph Road would be exciting. I think when you have the median up here and there's the 12-mile road, I know those dealers probably would put some kind of sculpture up there for their place. I mean, I just think we have enough interested parties along Telegraph Road that would sponsor a piece of art up there. And I think it would really be attractive to the city. I think that we as a city have to market our city totally different than what we're doing. We seem like doing the same old, and we used to be noted for being really in the front line of all these things. And I think we're just being passive, you know, not being creative anymore. And I think that we have to, you know, step it up a little bit.
Ms. Seymour was next, and then Mr. Frazier.
Yeah,
I had my hand up right before anybody, and you just seem to look that
I
way.
didn't see your hand. I thought you were going like this.
It doesn't matter to me. Okay. I'll say
Would
what
you
I have
like
to
to
say
go now,
now.
Mr. Lance? Please.
What'd you
well,
say?
Would you like to go?
Let her go.
All right.
I don't think you want to hear from me.
Of course I do.
well, I thought we were talking about public art, which I presume was more like sculpture.
Right.
And then we got off into performing arts. And we did have an arts council. We had two of them. We had one when Marla Ballinger was here, that many of us knew and remembered, and we were known for our music. We had concerts of all types. Really, we had a symphony. That was before I got involved with the group that did the Philharmonic. And they went out of business, which is what the sponsoring group, the managing group went out of business, so we lost that.
Nobody supported them, that's why.
Well, they did, but not to the extent that they wanted. And the managing group was charging us too much money, but that's another story. But we were known for our music. We were known for the mini concerts, big concerts, things in hotels, all kinds of things that we were doing in performing arts. And we did have some outdoor art shows. I'm not talking about the ones that are in the traveling where you can buy stuff. We did have some of the sculpture shows. So I want to distinguish, are we talking about the outdoor sculpture for prominent places? I like Don's idea of Telegraph Road. Or are we talking about everything? Because I think they're very distinct.
Well, I didn't want to limit it because I saw some great things in neighborhoods, but basically go back to Myron's comment in October that we cannot, we're trying to have a narrower focus. I noticed, for instance, in looking at other cities, that they have a fine arts, but the cities I've mentioned, like Chicago, San Diego, Omaha, Nebraska, have a public art commission, and it's just about art on public and private places. And if it's on a private place or a private property, then it's the developer of that property who has placed it there. In other words, they've used it as an enhancement instead of just landscaping or bushes or flower bed. They've put art out.
Sculpture, right.
Yeah, they put sculpture out. Indianapolis is another city that's done a really nice job on this, and Kansas City are two others with tons of sculpture and fountains.
I'm not finished. I had asked you the question, but I want to follow up. I think what would be important to us, you mentioned all these cities that have done things. I think if we could study, like in our own area, what communities have done, what problems they've encountered, so that before we go too far and cast something in stone or cement, that we find out what they've done, because I understand a lot of communities nearby have gone through different paths to get to there, and I'd like to know. I think we ought to study some of that, find out their experience. Some were good, some were not, some failed, some went at, I know it's very difficult to get money from the municipal council for the arts, very difficult. But that's what I would like to see us get a little more, do a little more homework on what's been done in our area among communities, to kind of see, you know, so we can avoid some of the pitfalls.
All right. I think Mr. Frazier.
No, I think Mr. Lance was done.
Mr. Lance?
Thank you. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. You were talking about a very, very difficult thing in Southfield. The project that you want, they're not facing reality.
I thought it was the project we all wanted from our October.
You could all have it. You can have it, you're going to vote for it. I'm not stopping anything. I'm just giving you a history of what's going to happen. Now, we had the building where the shrine is on now, that was our art building, all right? I hung 6 oil paintings there. My nephew, New York, is a well-known artist. He's got paintings in the Guggenheim Museum, and it was the same type they had. He gave me 6 paintings. They were stolen from here. I have one left at home, which I salvaged. It was found in the basement of the Tompkins house. We found it in the cellar. Piece of junk, but no, it was a painting. We had art here. We had the orchestra, remember? Well, we had them, we had the other orchestra. We didn't support them. Council didn't support them. They couldn't raise any money. I raised $5,000 one time from our corporations here. I got $5,000. They couldn't get any money, so they had to disband. Nobody seemed to care. Now, you're going to hang all the sculpture around Southfield. It's not going to last a month. It'll be stolen. They even stole the big boy a couple of years ago. Okay? Not a big thing. They stole it. I'm sour on all this. I don't believe. Jeremy doesn't know. He's too young to know anything.
I'm not putting that on my, Jeremy Law is too young.
He spoke very well of everything. Right, terrific, but it's not going to happen.
I have to jump in.
You agree?
Well, Myron is next then.
Wait a minute, I'm not through yet.
Oh, I thought you were. He said he wanted to jump in.
All right, I'm through. I don't want to speak to you guys.
Go ahead.
Nah, no more. Do whatever you please.
Come on.
I'm fed up with you talking, which won't happen. It's not going to happen. But I may as well.
Well, it won't if you're negative.
Huh?
It's positive energy that makes.
I'm giving you a history of the.
I lived your history.
When
I
I give you a past history, the history is not going to disappear.
Okay, I've been here since 1967. I know all about it. Okay.
So why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you ever
Well, I'm trying
protect
to
it?
do something now. That there was consensus in October. So, anyhow, Mr. Frazier,
All right.
you're next.
I have another meeting.
Okay, first of all, the only reason that I suggested that we focus on one kind of art, the statues or sculptures or whatever, rather than all kinds, to get us off the ground. It can grow into other mediums. But it seems to me we had the same conversation when we were talking about faces with the photos that were going to be around them. Oh, we can't do that. They're going to be stolen. They're going to be, it's going to be trashy. It's going to be. That was great. We, first of all, we can't have them on city property. That's people are going to run over the curb and run over people but it happened and it was really great. I had more people talk to me about the kids by the schools and wherever they had across the street. They thought that was really neat, and as far as I know, that it didn't cause any accidents, people. But it also gave those kids whose faces were on those boards a feeling that, hey, I'm part of this whole thing. And that kind of leads into the Art Council. We can do something like this as a council, or as a city government. We could buy sculptures and put them out, and it would be a sculpture setting out there. But if we have an Arts Council, the people that live in the community that get involved in this whole thing, then they have some ownership. They have some ownership and some pride in making sure that it works. Because if we do it, it's our project and they have nothing involved. If they do it, then it's good for the whole community, and there are a number of people that have ownership to make sure that it's done well. In your write-up, I want to challenge one little piece of it, and the piece is that you suggest the membership be the experts, the architects, and all. I think this is an excellent opportunity as an education tool. So I think people that have a liking for art, but don't have necessarily a degree or a background as an expert in art, would be part of this and learn what it's like to from the experts on how to pick art, what art really means. So I think it's a learning experience, especially for young people.
Can I throw out something like, are you talking like COSA, where we have general seats, and then we have specific areas on the COSA board, which is 11, I believe.
Yeah. I would like to see some of that.
Remember, COSA has,
yes.
In its charter, has assigned, and then they're just...
Yeah, someone has to be a
medical professional.
Yeah,
or
Yeah, I think so, that, and there is a way, even though in the way you've written it up, is community members. If whoever's making the appointments, concentrate on the fact that some of the community members ought to be people that are just interested in learning about art and being part of a art council, but may not have a degree in art or have studied art as a professional. I think that would be a seed for future art councils.
I see this as applying just like anybody does for a board or commission.
Yeah. But when you say it, landscape architects and others with experience in public art.
Okay.
I'm saying that maybe that ought to be for a strong interest.
Strong interest.
Yeah.
All right. Next is Mayor Lawrence, and then Jeremy Green.
Yes, I agree that this is a great start. Those of us who participate in the conferences and the dialogues and the National League of Cities, we always see cities that are progressive embrace their art. It is encouraged, and I think that one of the challenges that we have is that history should always be the foundation of creativity, not the barrier to creativity. Just because something was done a certain way in the past doesn't mean that today, because of the failures or success of that, it will be replicated. It is a foundation for us to build on. And one of the things I hear consistently when we talk about our history is that it was embraced and it was loved. It's a new day. We have a Southfield jazz band that I don't think you all even know about. They practice, they are tremendous, and these are a group of musicians who are professionals who just came together. They practice in the field zone, they mentor the kids. They are phenomenal. We're not paying for it, they're not asking us for money. They love music, and this is like a wonderful group of folks. It's very diverse. They've even picked a jazz singer, and they are really, really good. There are people, and when you look at other communities, it's not a burden to the city. These are people who are so passionate that they have their fundraisers, they do it, and they take it on, and for it to say that every project that they bring forward, I think there should be some type of control, but I think that they should be given some flexibility to do something creative. There is, I forget what city it was. Every year they have this am I saying it right? Art exhibit, where these people come in and they just stand there. I mean, it's not, it's but they organize it and they stand there and they put whatever minds do. But
That's right.
I mean, that's something other than a brick and mortar, and if people come all around, it's a big deal. So I don't want to put a lot of limits on it. I do agree that saying that in your application, you should have some commitment, involvement, expertise, or passion that you're bringing to art. I like art, but I'm not a professional. I never studied it. I look at it and I like it. The last point I want to make, Barton Mallow. If you go and visit their office, they have one of the most amazing art collections. Mr. Sosnick, when he was alive, has an amazing art collection. They are connoisseurs of art. I mean, their collections that they have run out of space at Barton Mallow because they forced everybody to have some type of very expensive art in their office. And so when you talk about people in this community that would be excited about, and you know, we got our students at Lawrence Tech who create stuff, and when they're doing stuff, and then part of that is they're architects, and they're creating art all the time. And instead of them just storing it at the end of the class, maybe we can have an annual art exhibit of just our Lawrence Tech students. So I just see so many opportunities. And when you look at Grand Rapids pull themselves up from their bootstrings with an art show, economic development of the yang recognition, and Don brought up, we think about all the kind of different art. I think we should light up these buildings for the holiday. When you drive through other major cities that have a skyline like we do, they light them, it's beautiful. And that's one of the art categories in Grand Rapids, is just displaying art on buildings. So we have a lot of opportunities, untapped talent, and I think we should go forward, and this will be a great thing for the city. Thank you.
Mr. Moss.
Yeah, well, I guess most of what I said, I'm going to say is in a response to Mr. Lance, what he said, so maybe someone will phone him at his other meeting and let him know. But I've been called worse than too young to know anything. But the greater point that I was trying to make earlier was not necessarily let's have just a flute concert. It's that getting a whole new generation involved brings renewed energy, renewed creativity, and it's not just on the Art Council. I think it's on the City Center and other things that come before this council. I hear so many times, well, we did it once, and you know, it didn't work because of this, or it died out this way, or we tried that way. And you have to understand that is Sid was right. I wasn't born then, you know, that's a generation before me as a Southfielder. So unless we're going to embrace a new generation of creativity, we have to throw out this notion that we've done it once before, it happened, it's a part of our history, and it stays there. We have a whole new potential of including people from Lawrence Tech, including the people who work here, including people who might want to look and live in Southfield because there is an excitement going on. So we have to stop the conversation by saying, you know, it happened with so-and-so and so-and-so at this point in time, because it's a part of our history, and I support that, but we have to look at 2012, we have to look now at 2013, and what is going to keep Southfield competitive with the cities around us. Because if we don't grow as a city, we stay the same. And growing as a city includes welcoming young families and new residents and growing our population base. You know, if we don't try it again, you know, then we're limiting ourselves. So there's this whole, it's a circular discussion that I think has been prevalent throughout the entire year of, well, we tried it. We did it this way one time before. We got to throw out that notion. I support our history, but it's a new day, and we got to stay relevant and competitive in this day and age.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I think that we need to put some priorities on fundraising, because I see that's one of the commission's responsibilities. Because there are other projects in the city that need resources. And if we have these guys running to the same pot that we need the money for other, opportunities, I think we need to sort of govern that a little bit, as well as priority on placement. I don't think the city center area should be the only place that we put the public art. I think we need to look at the gateways around the city, as well as the neighborhood instances and the border. I think there has to be some priorities given to this commission. I also believe that, this is talking about public art. I believe public art is painting those vacant buildings along 8 Mile, getting a committee and having these guys, you know,
Exactly.
make the borders of the city look good. That's important. You can't just put a nice piece of art in the middle of the city and 8 Mile looks a mess. So I think we've got to give some priorities on what the commission should go after. And then what else concerns me is I'm not sure if this should be the planner. I think we've got a lot of other things that the planner should be doing, and using his resources for, as opposed to this commission. I think this should go to someone else. I'm just not sure if this should go to the planner. Public art. That's my.
Okay, Mr. Charette,
Yeah, I just had a experience last week, but this topic was coming up. So I happened to get a notice of the meeting, and it was by this Art Serve, which is a nonprofit that's encouraging art throughout the. So I let our council president know. We went, and I'll tell you what interested me about it was for every dollar invested in art, and they've got stats, $51 comes back on public investment. So it's part of the economic comeback of the region. Makes sense.
Yeah, our whole, the whole presentation basically, that meeting Jim and I attended on Wednesday night was art is an economic driver, and that, you can fuel, revitalization through art, and obviously Grand Rapids is probably the best Michigan case study of that. Ms. Seymour?
Yeah, Mr. Seibert, I'm very supportive of the arts. I mean, I have artists in my family. I went to art school. I've been involved with the nonprofit gallery for 20 years. We've gone all over the world looking for artists. I've traveled out of the country doing that. I know that it can generate a lot of economic development. Art Serve president used to be right here in Southfield. The executive of Art Serve was right here in Southfield, president. If you look up on Americans for the Arts on the web, you will see how much of a driver of economic development it is. My concern is what we do and how we do it. And I am concerned about going to the same people for money if we're looking for purchases, for example. So we have so many demands, and I'm concerned about what we do and how we do it. I totally support, and let me just say what Mr. Lance said. We did have at one time 2 orchestras. We've had 3 orchestras here in the city. We had the Scandinavian Symphony. At different times, different things work. At different times, different things get supported. It depends on the people running them sometimes. Some people don't know how to run them, and that happened with one of our orchestras. We had a really good symphony here, but the group that managed it charged way too much money for just their participation. So some of these were problems, not with the arts, but with who was behind it and how it was done. So that's my concern, how we do it and what we do.
Well,
I wanted to clarify that. They've all, can I finish?
Oh, yeah, sure.
They've all been successful at one time. Doesn't mean that they can't still be successful. When Marla Ballinger had her council for the arts, she had Lucia, General Lucia. She had big name people from major businesses here, and we put on concerts all over, not symphonies, but all kinds of smaller concerts. So we've done a lot of stuff. No reason we can't bring some of this back. You know, maybe the leader died, maybe the and some people didn't, with one of the symphonies, they weren't filing their papers right as a nonprofit, so they lost their status. These kind of things happen. That doesn't mean that these aren't good things to try to do again, and it's just what we do and how we do it.
Well, as far as funding goes, I just want to respond to you that, for instance, the coasting the baseline, there are individuals now that have stepped forward, just residents, who said, I will give money to that. I'll give $50, I'll give $100 to that. They want to be part of it, because they like the concept. And a lot of it all comes down to, like foundations are only going to support certain things in their vision or mission. And so, I don't want to go, I don't see this Public Art Commission going to the same sources all the time, the Lears, the Federal Moguls, or whomever. There are other untapped sources out there, and there are people that would be interested in this. I have a neighbor who is dying to join this effort, would love to see this and would love to donate sculpture, large sculptures, or sculpture that he owns, that happens to be David Barfi, to the city. So, I mean, I think that's something we work through. I think your concern about the priority on funding and so on is valid, except that there are people that won't give to certain things. I mean, if we went out and collected for, let's say, bring the fireworks back, there'd be some people that would say no way, and others would pony up. So it depends on people's interest. And I'm thinking back on Secure 24, the new tech company that we attended the open house. Was it June? I think. That place is just loaded with contemporary Detroit artists' work. It's phenomenal. And they were young artists who were at the reception showcasing their work, and the company embraced it and purchased their work. So, I think that, I would agree with the mayor. I mean, I just see, we did it, it's not going to work. Those to me are brake lights, they're tail lights. So looking backwards, not forward, can we go forward? And who knows? We get a group of people that really have the vision for this and the passion for it. We're not asking for city dollars. We're asking them to use their contacts. So, I mean, we can tweak this. Certainly one of the things that we need to do is have the commission would have to develop a policy on accepting donations and on placement. Anything is possible if we allow people to go for it. And I think Ms. Myron has said, let it be citizen-led. Absolutely. Instead of us putting it down on somebody, we're just setting up a mechanism so that it has an official structure. That's all we're doing here.
The Art Serve presentation said the state quadrupled funding, so we might bang on their door because they've certainly done a lot of things to challenge the city's. Maybe we can get some help for.
Well,
they did quadruple the funding, so.
I would like to tonight refer this to the Neighborhood Services Committee. To follow up with Ms. Seymour's suggestion about getting something more local than the big cities that I cited, and come back to council.
We're working.
Okay.
I want to make sure that whenever we put this group together, that we have art collectors involved. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People with a passion for art, they don't have to be an artist.
But collectors will add a lot of energy to it.
And I'd like to see if the committee could maybe work with Mr. Charette to see who else could possibly be the liaison person.
Yeah.
I just don't think this should be our city.
just the reason I thought it should go to the planner, and it doesn't have to, but my thinking was, what other communities have done is they've tied the planning to it, as a way of enhancing development. And I just thought it was a natural, for Terry or, Shelley, somebody in doing that work in the city to be
involved, but not to have it all.
Well, they're not heading it, they're just serving as the liaison, which I assume they would take a chair of the commission. But, that can be discussed further, this year. All right, thank you for the work out on that. And we'll move along to our next, agenda item, which, we need a Rule 10 on, and, Mr. Crowe, are you gonna take this?
I'm going to start, and Mr. Crowe will take any detail on the project itself.
Okay.
This is to encourage walking and biking. We have an opportunity to apply to the Transportation Alternatives program of NDOT, assist the city in completing its network of off-road non-motorized paths. In particular, they're recommending two segments, or we're recommending two segments. Evergreen Road between Midway and 9 Mile Road, and 9 Mile Road between Evergreen and Prescott, and Southwood Street between Lakewood and Sherfield. Both of these segments provide critical length to existing paths and popular destinations. One of the benefits of this project is it will be 100% funded by either grant funds or the Metro Act dollars, which are monies that the different corporations are required to remit to the city for their ability to operate within our infrastructure, to put cabling under our roads and systems, infrastructure. And so we're recommending that we apply for this grant. So this is a good team approach. HRC drafted the letter outlining the project, and we've looked at it from the financial and planning perspectives. The Metro Act monies are available for this. It is in the rights of way. We had to check on that, and most definitions of right of way and basically sidewalks, but actually it goes further. So we're okay in terms of our ability to use Metro Act monies. And so with that, Mr. Code has a detail on the projects, and we are asking for immediate need to act on this because of the deadlines on the grant, and this being the last meeting of the calendar year.
And through the chair, I'll just piggyback on what Mr. Charette said. This is part of the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is the new version of what was formerly called ICE-T enhancements and so forth. And this is the end of the round for 2013. So if we don't apply, we lose this altogether. And starting next month, the applications start coming towards 2014. The other thing is, I just want to remind the council that it's because they adopted the non-motorized pathway plan in March that we're even eligible to apply. And many of the questions of the grant tie directly into, do you have a plan in place? Did you hold public hearings? Is this a priority as part of your plan? So as several departments, including Parks and Recreation, Engineering, Planning, and our consultants got together and looked at priorities, we said, what do we have the best chance of possibly securing funding for? And two projects kind of stood out based on the eligible costs and scoring. Boveric Woods Park along 9 Mile has no pathway at all, and we can connect the neighborhoods from the west across Boveric 9 Mile frontage and then down Evergreen to the neighborhoods and schools to the south. And so this would in essence create probably another mile of trail to connect in with our 32 miles existing. The other area in the more Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods, there's a lack of safe routes to school. And so we picked Southwood from Sherfield Place to Lincoln Drive to tie into, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Shanos Elementary School, Thompson Middle School, and Yeshiva Beth Yehuda School. This would provide safe sidewalks for children that currently have to walk in the streets. We thought that the total of these two projects equals about 1.3 miles, would score well. They're identified in our plan as a priority, and we would have a good chance of getting funding. So one is the timing of the grant itself. We wanted to take advantage of this last round for 2013. Secondly, we had an adopted master plan that we could pick the projects from. And thirdly, I think they tie into some of the citizen concerns about walkability and safety, as well as recreation, accessibility to our parks.
Is there any,
I have a question.
sure, any more?
Southwood doesn't have sidewalks all the way.
No, it only goes to a certain point and then it stops.
I walked that area so long, so many times. I should know that by heart.
Right, and unfortunately, the kids, they get to a certain point and then they have to walk in the street for the rest of the remaining way.
We need a Rule 10.
Yes, we do.
Move to Rule 10.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Prokop, supported by Ms. Seymour, for me to need to act. All those in favor?
Aye.
Should I move at the request of the city planner in regards to the transportation alternatives program grant be sought? And
Moved by Mr. Prokop,
hopefully we'll
supported
get-
by Ms. Seymour. Discussion, Mr. Frazier?
Just a question. Because this is so late in the game, you said that beginning next month, starts the round for 2013,
14.
or 2014?
Right.
Do we know there's any money left in the fund that,
Yes, what they've done in the past, there used to be the Transportation Enhancement Funds,
Yeah.
Safe Routes to School, and one other fund. This new legislation it's called MAP, Michigan Alternatives Program or something to that effect, pools all those three programs together. So there's a new round of funding. It's not as much as it used to be, and they've pooled to make the application simpler instead of applying under three different grant programs. They've put it consolidated under this one program. So there is additional funds available in 2013 and 2014.
okay, because it sounds like, I thought I heard you say that the grant application beginning was in April, and you said something there.
All I said was that
Okay,
because
never
we
mind.
adopted the master
If there's
plan
money
in
there,
March,
that's all I need to know, 'cause
yeah,
I just wanted to fill out a form
In
and...
theory, the application was submitted on Friday with a note that the council would be meeting their last meeting today.
Okay, that's all I need to know, that there's money left.
Anyone else? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 on our agenda is the Taxicab bond plate update. On this item, our city ordinance is quite detailed. Ms. Banks provided a copy of that for you, as well as some times in the past where council changed some of the bond numbers and so on. The clerk's office only serves to issue the plates if they're the paper processor. The police department, under our ordinance, has been the one to determine the fitness of the applicant. In the past, I see that Public Works is involved, or through the traffic engineer as well. My understanding from Ms. Banks is that we currently don't have a taxicab review committee. So this evening, just to outline what's going to take place, we don't have to do anything. We can just simply review it, or we can put this under further review, possibly. In the past, it's always gone to Neighborhood Services Committee. With that, Ms. Banks, do you want to lead this off?
Thank you, Council President Kramer. I didn't know how to put this packet together. I know, John, you had the other information, update on the bond site. And as you can see, I did present within the packet kind of a scenario of traffic engineer used to make a suggestion and recommendation with reference to, the various applicants that were to come forward, to hold a bonfire in the city, and then it was reviewed by a Taxicab, review commission, which I believe consisted of the clerk, the attorney, the traffic engineer, and there was one other person on, and I can't remember. We no longer have such a committee, and we no longer have, a traffic engineer that, can make that recommendation. Throughout the years, we've had, good bonfire holders and those that were less desirable. I believe we have finally cleaned up, and the chief of police was here, those that were causing problems in our city as far as price gouging, changing their meters, not operating clean gas. Those offenders no longer are working in our city. And the present fleet that we have, I personally feel and believe are pretty good drivers. Years ago, when we increased the number of bond plates, and there is a formula attached that I'm sure I quite understand, I think it was put together by Tom Buchanan. And that was a result of all the hotels at the time requesting additional transportation. We had the Michigan Inn, we had the Holiday Inn, we had the Sheraton, the Radisson or whatever it was called, and also the Westin Hotel. Then along the way, the law was changed, and during that time when we had the 90-some bond plates, the bond plates encompassed not only a taxi cab, but also a limousine, and also package pickup and delivery. Then the state came in and changed how bond plates were to be issued, and limousine services were now exempt from licensing from the city, and they would go up through the state, as well as package pickup and delivery. So we had a family that had 40-some bond plates that slowly sold their cars to other people, and then they went into what is called the Metro cars, and a lot of the hotels you'll see the black Lincolns, the black SUVs, and they are governed under the state of Michigan, not from the city of Southfield. And it's just very similar, like when we were at the NLC in Boston, we stayed at the Westin. They had a fleet out there. You go in, they give you their card, and they say, you know, if you need transportation, contact us, and they charge a similar rate to the Taxicab. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell. We presently have 23 active bond plates. There was a gentleman who came in this year, and he came to our counter, and I believe he wanted 40 bond plates or 30 bond plates, and I think he was just going into business at that time. I'm not sure if he presently operates in Detroit. I don't know anything about him. We told him at the present time bond plates weren't being issued, and I know he's been further, presented copies of his report to council, and then, went up the food chain, who this person is. I don't know anything about them, but we basically have cleaned up our taxicab situation. There are other companies out there that people have questioned, why don't we use them? I think it's a white and green car, it's
The green.
the green, right. And then we've even talked about, should we even be in the licensing business? For what we presently charge, we're not really capturing the money back. I know there was a study done, Fred Dorn and also Terry Crowe were involved in it, and we talked about possibly working together to issue like vouchers for seniors and or handicapped individuals who wanted to use kind of like the TOSS program after hours. But I think it just would come down to, the time, the staff, and, where are we going to go with this?
Well, I think really the discussion, if I could help frame it, he's done a good job, but frame it a little bit more, it comes down to just several questions.
Mm-hmm.
Should we try to build up we currently have 23, should we try to add to the fleet by forming a committee and issuing bond plates our current, unless we change the formula, it's currently at 96. We could have up to 96 bonded plates in the city. So that's one thing to discuss. The second thing to discuss is if we are going to do that, then who would do the review, and what is the cost to the city of that review? And is it worth it? Or do we charge more for the bond plate to like we do with a lot of our permits, to reimburse the city for the cost of going into the analysis and the review? But I'm also wondering, Nancy, if part of this, the reason we only have 23 plates is because this whole limo thing, ironically, I left here after the council president last week. I go home, and a house 2 doors down, this taxicab pulls up, and I just happened to be out walking, so I went over to the cab. It's not bonded for Southfield. And I was looking at the bond plates, and the woman that had called the cab said to me, is there a problem? I said, oh no, I'm just curious about where this cab is coming from. And it was coming from Royal Oak. But then I noticed on the door, it looked like a cab, but on the door it says limo. So in other words, it just makes me wonder how prevalent is this? I mean, I don't really call it cabin when I do. It's a metro car to the airport or something. But I'm just not sure. Is this an issue really, or?
That is an issue. We have similar situations like that. It looks like a cab. They call it a limo. I'm not sure if they're licensed from the state of Michigan. We have some people that have the SUVs. They claim they're a limo. And then you have the metro
It's
car.
the light on the top.
That's
whole thing.
correct.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the state does not report to us whether they're licensed or not. I know personally I've questioned a few, and, what do we do? Do we keep calling the police department to report these people and go out and ticket them? We're down on police officers, so I don't know. I'm open to suggestions on how we should handle this and how to handle the violators that are even out there.
I think we should send it to there's a lot of issues that are sensitive.
Yes, there are a lot.
I'm not sure we're gonna be able to.
I don't know that we are either, so, but I promise that we will bring this back to the table. Mr. Perkowski?
Yeah. Without being sarcastic, some of the older guys do know what's going on.
Right.
Jeremy. But anyways, I had this gentleman, I believe, has got one of those.
Yeah,
All of council got it.
But anyway, I say deregulate it. If somebody wants to get a bond plate in the city, he's willing to have, it needs 10 to have a dispatch center. And the only thing that is important is to have guidelines for those who are pulling bond plates. And whatever else is out there, I would say that if anybody comes in and does not have a bond plate, that maybe the condition of them, that was the big thing back then, was that the conditions were really raggy. I mean, guys with no fenders and everything else. And so Mookie would run everybody through the DPW garage, and the police department had a guy that would check that up for safety purposes, and then we would either reissue the plate or we take it away. But, we have a problem in this city, a serious problem, is getting people to work. And MDOT and DDOT do not get together, and SMART doesn't get together, so if you are working in Southfield, to be able to get into the office building, you are dropped off by DDOT at Northland, the station, then you gotta wait maybe 2.5 hours sometimes 3 for a smart bus to make its route, to pick them up, and then go on their route to drop them off at wherever they work. So we are really crippling our office personnel, restaurants, and all these things. When I had my restaurant, I was with Golden Mushroom and Big B's, and we would have a jitney, our own jitney that we supported, that would pick up our employees in Detroit and drop them off at our businesses because we could not get anybody to work in our restaurants. There was no facilities, nothing transportation-wise to get them from there. So we picked them up. We had meeting places for them. Some people lived close by each other. We did a D-dot bus and meet the other one at this corner. Then we'd pick up 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10 people and distribute them. The taxicab situation is, that came to me as important when Mahashi was across the street and a lot of the hotels, you get New Year's Eve drinking, they say, call a cab. Well, I defy anybody to get on the phone over here and call a cab and see how long you have to wait for them. I mean, they're going where the money is. And so I think you give somebody a chance, you give bond plates and make sure that you have, regulated to the point where they operate in Southfield and stipulations on how the cabs look, and let them go. And if they don't make money, they're going to leave anyway.
Our ordinance is really detailed, spells all of this out.
Yeah, I know.
Really, totally. So it's just,
We used to have a taxi cab committee. Yeah. And they handled all this stuff, and they would meet with the police department and find out, what was lacking in our ordinance, and we rewrite it again. But I think it all comes down to the bottom line is that people have to get to the doctor. There's a dispatch center. What was his name, Nancy?
It was,
Bizak
family.
Bizak had at that time a dispatch. Then, of course, he would promote himself into metro cars and whatever have you. But once there's a dispatch center, the people can call that and they can get a cab. And that's what we're really lacking is a place that they can call, they can advertise their number and call a cab, here's the number, we can help them promote it. And be sure that anybody who's got a bond plate in the city and just let it go. Anybody who needs a bond plate, but as far as getting one and reselling it, that there ought to be something that states that you cannot sell the bond plate. It's got to be turned back in. That, of course, is well, and that's what we ran into, guys.
I agree with that.
And we had the Lowensteins, had the cabbie there.
Then I forgot about that. Other loans things.
Miss Lauren?
Yeah, Marcia was great. He'd take you anywhere.
I wanted to ask a question to the clerk. When you said we weren't giving out any more bonds, when did we reach and why did we reach the position that we're not giving out any more bonds?
Well, the clerk should not be the one to make the decision, yes, you get one, no, you don't. Kind of like a liquor license, because like Don said, right now, they could sell it. So that's where we have the Taxicab committee. In fact, and on that committee, what they did is when there were places...
I understand that, but why did you say at this point we're not giving out?
Because we don't have a Taxicab committee, and who is, I guess, the person to say, okay, you can have 10, you can have 1, you can have 3. We don't have that committee and review like we used to.
How long have we not had a committee?
It's been, I want to say since Bob North. It's been a long time. We haven't issued
That
legislation.
resolution that we passed is July 20th, 1986, I see it.
Well,
We haven't looked
I think
back.
2006 was the last time we had.
But there have been others, there's
Yeah.
been other problems also along the way that they were trying to clean out, or they were trying to weed out some of the drivers that were less desirable in the city. So we were working with the police department and legal to get rid of some of those.
And I'd like to hear from the chief and see.
Yeah, I was going to ask him next.
What he,
He's too young.
And if I
Wait a
If I
minute,
can
the mayor
finish,
isn't
please.
done.
Oh, all right.
So it's been a while.
My other question is this whole issue about the bond plate the lack of that committee, or are we saying, do we want cabs bond, or this is my question. Other neighboring communities, you said Royal Oak. Does our other neighboring committees, how do they issue their bond plates?
Some of the surrounding communities do not regulate taxicab. They let anyone come in and anyone come out. We have not done a study as to how many, but in Oakland County, I believe there's like only a handful that regulate. Everyone else is deregulated. So you could call, look in the phone book, call any company and allow them to come into your city to pick up on your limit.
And what is the pros and cons of that?
I probably would defer to the chief, but I think part of it is the background investigation, who's operating in your city. Also, presently our police department does do a thorough check on the cabs to make sure, number one, they don't switch one door from one cab to another. And I guess I defer to the chief to further explain. They do a lot of work in this whole process.
Before you start. So, from the clerk's office, can you tell me of pros and cons that, other than the police checks, is there any pros and cons to cabs coming and going in the city?
Can you repeat your question?
As a clerk, what would be the problem if we deregulated and cabs, you just pick up the phone and call a cab? What would be the problem with you as a clerk?
I personally don't think there would be a problem deregulating it, because what we presently charge for what we do, I'm not sure if we'll be capturing the money. And there are other companies out there that I, for one, would love to call, but I can't call because they don't work in the city of Southfield. So as an individual whose family does use a taxi cab, I would have the opportunity to say, I like Don's cab, I'm gonna call, or, maybe Sue's is better, but, Jeremy's cab service, I'll never do that. So, you know what, I would have a variety of people to choose from, and right now, I'm limited in, and we had a bad group at one time. Right now, we've got a pretty good group, and that's where the committee comes in. The clerk should not be the one to pick and choose who's gonna be operating in our city, so.
Simply, we don't know, though, do we have an adequate number of Southfield cabs?
That's the big question.
Well, and I guess I asked around the table, has anyone received any complaints recently, within the last year or two?
Yeah, but if you have someone coming up to the counter ready to start 40 cabs.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't we accept it?
Yeah.
I don't know
You can't make money, won't last long, you get out.
Right.
Turn in your plates and goodbye.
Well, let's see.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Council President, Madam Mayor, and members of council and members of the community. With taxi cabs, the police department's our role is limited at this point. Right now, we talked about the inspections and the background checks for all of the taxi cab drivers and their cabs. So what happens is, once they apply for a taxi cab bond plate, they get transferred over to the police department. And each person that wants to drive the cab has to undergo a background check. And this is a criminal check that's conducted by a member of the police department. In addition to that, they have to take a written test. And this is a 14 or 15 question test. And they have to score a minimum score in order to pass this test. And I believe they can not have any more than 2 incorrect answers on the test. If they pass that part of the process, then the person assigned by the police department conducts the thorough check of their cab, or their vehicle that the city clerk talked about. And we talked, Councilman Fracassi talked about years ago how some of the vehicles were just in disrepair, and they just weren't, from a customer service standpoint, it just wasn't something that we wanted our citizens to have to deal with. So we look at all those things. We look at, look at what does it look like? Obviously the person that's doing this is not a mechanic, so they're not going underneath and checking, the shocks and stuff like that. But they do a cursory check of the vehicle to make sure that ensure that it is operable and it's something that represents the city of Southfield. And if they pass that part of the process, then it goes back to the city clerk's office, and the person is given their bond plate. Now, Madam Mayor talked about some of the pros and cons of this, of us regulating this process. Well, from my perspective, the pros, some of the positives of this are the customer service part of it. If there is no regulation, then we have these cabs. Right now, they can drop off, but they cannot pick up unless they have a bond plate. So with deregulation, we're allowing some of these cabs that have no interaction whatsoever with the city to come in. We don't know what their vehicles look like, what conditions they're in, what kind of service they're providing our citizens. And so we're kind of left out of the loop in that respect. So we lose a little bit there. Some of the cons is the city clerk talked about was enforcement. It's very difficult to enforce these once they're out there, because basically we have to have our officers out there follow, seeing a cab, we see a cab out there and they got to follow a cab and see if it has a bond plate, is the bond plate valid, and they've got to stop it. Did you pick up, or are you dropping? So enforcement is somewhat difficult. So now procedurally from the police department, whatever happens, we can, it's something that we can handle. And we have some people in place to, whether it's regulated or not, we can get the job done.
Any other questions? I heard that we, like say for example, Royal Oak, you run into that city doesn't reciprocate with Southfield, for example. So we'd have to make sure that we have. From my perspective, if this young man or whoever he is is looking for 10 plates, because that's what he can get to have his dispatch center, and we can control him, then it's up to him to be able to work with these other communities to get permission to pick up and go wherever he wants, and he'd probably through that dispatch center be able to make money because he can pick up in any other city and drop off in any city. I think that the flexibility is what's important, not so much the deregulation, but the flexibility that they need, and I don't know what their feelings are about what they're running into out there. We're not getting any feedback at all. I wouldn't know who to call for a cab in the city, personally. And so, and I don't even know who dispatches them. I don't know what number they call to get a cab. So, even though they have a bond plate, they're operating city of Southfield. I don't know how in the world they can make it, because, you could reference to anybody, somebody say, hey, I'd like to call a cab. Okay.
You go on your phone.
The yellow cab yellow cab of Southfield has a dispatch service that they participate with, called the yellow cab. And those that are not part of yellow cab, it's my understanding it's yellow cab of Southfield.
Well, my suggestion would be is to give it to a committee of your choice, and I think that committee can have taxi cab people come in and see what the story is, and also have somebody like this come in and tell the story, and find out what the problem is, and see how then we can interact with it, or say, hey, you know what, forget it, it's operating the way it is, let it operate the way it is. But like I said, I think the most important part of this is getting people into all these office buildings to work. And somehow they have to know who to call, where to call, when they can get picked up at work and get back to where they're going, because you can't rely on the bus system.
Okay, Mr. Krog would like to say something.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to echo a few of the comments again. I do recommend that this go for further study. That was one of the recommendations in our transit study earlier this year. What we did find out is that there's a lack of the reciprocal pick-up and drop-off for other communities. The formula was developed in the 80s. That may not be the right formula for today, and we could research what other communities are doing. At the very least, we could assist the neighborhood services in recalculating that formula to determine what the maximum number of bond plates. There's also issues with the lack of some of these cabs being accessible to persons with disabilities and the lack of providing that service to persons in wheelchairs and so forth. There was recommendations for the TOS program about reducing the size of some of their vehicles so that they could be more efficient. And then I think, as Mr. Zorn had pointed out, there should be a review of some flexibility with, call it a voucher or call it another program. So again, I think what we initially discovered echoes a lot of the comments that were made tonight, and at least should go for further study, and we would be happy to support some of that investigation.
One of the things I think that the Neighborhood Services Committee, when they take this up, needs to look at, I believe the bond plate is $100. And I don't think, I have a feeling that that's not adequate for cost recovery. I'm not, one way or another, some data needs to be gathered on that as well. Ms. Barnes?
I also would like the committee to look at, you hear the clerk, we know everyone's downsizing. I'm sure there's a company out there that can do bond plates, that can certify and do background checks. If they can run jails and lockups and do everything else, they can do some background checks. So maybe that might be a way to go. But however it is, there should be an active committee. And I would hope if there's any other functions of the city that's not happening because of lack of committees, that we would know about it until not just wait for it to surface like this with the cab stuff. I'm going to echo what Don said. The hotel, we had a hotel managers meeting, and that was one of their biggest complaints for the midnight shifts or evening shifts when the buses stopped running. They literally they were pooling together to get a shuttle to pick the employees from Northland because they could get to Northland, but there was nothing running in Oakland County. So the need is there, and I just want to share a funny story. I know I had a very indulged daughter, so when she missed the bus in high school, she would call the cab to take her to high school. And she had a regular cab that she would call, and he would come take her.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Ms. Jordan?
I was just wondering if we can get rid of the capital
Yeah.
provide them,
Nancy
Sorry, I
has
can't
it.
hear.
but provide them also to the community, so that I think the consensus, nobody knows.
It should be on our website.
It is.
We
It
bond
is on the website. I thought it was on the website, yeah.
What, you mean, call a cab?
Yeah, it's on the website. I thought it was.
Tax services.
All right,
Okay.
so, Myron, you have your marching orders.
Yeah, I know that I'm gonna be doing quick time into a wall. Everything that we've talked about, everything no, it's not so much that it's the neighborhood services, but I'm not real sure what the outcome we're looking for.
Well, that's why it's being referred to.
For us to figure out.
As I said, you can do nothing, and just leave it the way it is, or update the formula, do the cost recovery.
Understand all that, and after all of the administrative work is done, there still has to be elbows and arms and legs to check out the cabs, to do, and if a cab is in our territory, we need a pit bull to go out there and tell them to get away. You know, I mean, with the police department being down,
Well, as
Give it
Mayor
to,
suggested,
code
maybe
enforcement.
we could outsource that.
We give it to code enforcement.
Well, what we're going to do, I don't think the committee should have to do this
No.
without some research done first. I mean, we've got to figure out what do other communities do? How does this get handled in other places? What, if there's an exemplary community, or an exemplary way to handle this, what's the best practices?
Okay, before you do that, though, I got an idea. Our first meeting will be to get a list of questions, and then we can go from there.
The Detroit Visitors Convention Bureau would be a good resource for us. They've done a lot of this for the metro cars, and we're looking at it, the Detroit Airport, and they're trying to address this. They may actually be an entity who could do the inspections and that. Anything you can get to get uniformity between all of the communities in Oakland County will go a long way.
Yeah. And I don't know that the airport authority has moved to allow other folks to deliver folks to the airport.
They have two entities, everyone has to go through a 16-hour hospitality training, and the Convention Bureau is putting that together as
Okay.
part of the Disney Institute.
Okay, we won't do our committee work here, but you will certainly be invited to our meetings.
We've been waiting, and this is part of this, Mr. Coates said, part of this transit. It is a piece of the public transportation equation.
Okay, moving on. We have the 2011-12 year-end actions. This is an annual event, and we need to take action tonight. This is our last.
Move to Rule 10, please.
Support.
Moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Chair, I move the,
Do you want to have Mr. Perkowski say anything? I mean, Mr. Charette say anything, Mr. Perkowski first?
Thank you very much. One of my better presentations.
I know it's quite attached,
It's very thorough,
footnotes.
very thorough.
I know, if Jim wants to say something, I'm here all night.
I think we're heading in the right direction.
Support. Go ahead. All right, it's been moved by Mr. Perkowski, seconded by Ms. Jordan, to approve the fund balance allocation for 2011-12 year-end action. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries.
I would like to, with the chair's authority or approval, if we could, I'd like to do a 5-minute or less update on personal property tax.
We have two other.
Can we do, move, enactment, Rule 10 again?
Yeah.
Support.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Perkowski, supported by Mr. Moss, for Rule 10. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
And I enact ordinance number 1600.
Support.
and moved by Mr. Perkowski, supported by Mr. Moss, to enact ordinance 1600. All those in favor?
Aye.
Jim has his piece, and then Nancy has a piece before we're adjourned.
Yeah, I want to say that.
There's anybody else, but I want to make sure we recognize.
First of all, I would like to say, with regard to both the audit that will be coming up, as well as the personal property tax, progress noted in both areas, and we're talking now about future directions. With regard to the personal property tax, there's been a tremendous effort on the part of many folks, including the Michigan Municipal League, city staff, and elected officials of the city, our lobbyists, state elected officials, Senator Vincent Gregory, Representative Rudy Hobbs, and I want to say it's been quite a roller coaster. I think it was about midnight that Councilman Moss gave me the latest information on midnight of the last night of the legislative actions. And at that time, we were back in bad shape about where we were a year ago, where there was $9 million at issue, because they were thinking of taking a vote on all the personal property tax basically going away. Mr. Moss gave me the number of Rudy Hobbs. I exercised that number, I gave him a half hour. I called about 12:30, he said, they've ordered pizza, that's not good.
They were there until 5 in the morning.
That's right.
In any event, they got the reimbursement back in. Also, we got the tie bar piece back in, which tie bars the whole action with the election coming up in August of 2014, the primary. So I would say that we're in a lot better shape now than we were a year ago. This has gone from basically a nightmare to a financial and legal challenge, and which probably will end up at some point, after we do more homework with the joint meeting of the Finance Committee, the Legislative Committee, and Neighborhood Services will have to play in this. Although they certainly get an update. But what we have is, the PPT, personal property tax. None of it will take place until 14/15. So that's the first good news, because we were looking at it in the upcoming year, possibly that. So that gives us a year to figure it out. There are 11 bills. No one understands all 11 of them at this point. I'm sure each of the bills are understandable, but taken as a group of 11, ins and outs, and it's a workout. And tomorrow they're having, the league is sponsoring a live chat at 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning, and I will be participating, see if I can get more information. But the bottom line is that we have a year to figure this out, and we're in a lot better shape than we were. This probably will still negatively affect our tax base in some way, but it's certainly a whole lot less than the $9 million threat we were looking at a year ago. And so I want to thank and recognize all the people in the room that participated in this effort to try to bring this thing to some sort of manageable situation. That's my report.
Ms. Banks, notebook.
Yes, it was suggested for the 2013 calendar year that we will supply council with 3 notebooks, a large one, a medium, and a small one. And then when we deliver the packets to you, we're just going to deliver the packets with holes and everything in them, and then you can just put your information into your books, keep those 3 books, and then you don't have to worry about returning them back and forth to us. Some council members are real good in returning the books to us, and some are not. And this way you'll have the option to either put it into a folder, but you will have 3 books to work with, and if you need an additional book or binder, you could just let us know.
I get 0 books, binders, because I have some extras.
Okay. And then also, Jim, did you talk to Ken about moving the starting time of the next meeting? Were we gonna do it this meeting?
3 o'clock.
So I think we might need,
We're gonna go to 3?
we might need.
Yeah, we have to clear the 28th, because we know we'll have provide for a lot of public comment, and so it's stripping that agenda virtually to, I think, 2 consent items, and then the public hearing on, for St. Bede's rezoning on the 28th. That really cramps us for the 14th, so, we need to move the meeting up. We sort of timed it out, and we think we're gonna need an extra hour.
What meeting are you talking about?
January 14th.
January.
We were already scheduled to start at 4, but now we're looking at starting at 3. Remember, we have 3 public hearings that night on other items, as well as public comment at 7 o'clock.
So hopefully there'll be a little time for a break in there, but there wouldn't have been any time. If we start at 4, it would be going right in from 4 to 7.
So we need a Rule 10 to change the starting time.
So moved.
All right. It's been moved by Ms. Frazier, supported by Ms. Jordan. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, then we need a motion to change the starting time of the January 14th meeting to
3 o'clock.
3
So moved.
It's been moved by Fraser, supported by Jordan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Somebody better tell.
Yeah,
Sid.
and then the first hand I saw, was Mr. Percassi, but we could go right around the table.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, you had something, John, you wanted to?
Yeah, in our packet was this resolution from Lincoln Village. And, you know, I know they're a neighboring community, and you know, we're close politically and close in friendships and all this, but I can't believe that these people would send a resolution to this body telling us what to do with our property. You know, I sit here, you know, pardon me, again, I lived through I-696 when they built a park in the way of I-696 and just to stop it, and Huntington Woods did the same thing with their park. And they cost us a ton of money because they stuck their nose into it trying to stop something which is going to happen. Now they come forward again and telling us how to use property when they come and throw a roadblock into our funding for Southfield Road. I mean, we'd have had that started, I believe, 14?
14, and
Yeah.
this, the common area,
2004.
we're out for engineering right now between 12 and 13 miles. There'll be a very unique conversation with the road commission tomorrow.
Yeah, 2014, we had a median on Southfield Road and landscaping and make our city work as far as traffic is concerned. And I went to this meeting and I seen some of the alternatives. And what they're really trying to do is block against any improvement in Southfield Road. They're going to try to make it like Grosse Point, Jefferson Avenue. I really believe that, because I don't know how in the world anybody is going to do lateral parallel parking on Southfield Road, stop your car, and back it up into a parking spot, you know, and with 55 mile an hour minimum speed on Southfield Road, if it's that. You know, it's probably 85. You know, and I just, you know, this is not a spirit of cooperation. Other than, you know, you come to us and say, you know, we'd like to sit down with council and discuss your plans and my plans and see how we can cooperatively make it work. But, you know, the office buildings they built back in the 50s and early 60s, they sit on the road, they got parking on the right-of-way, and so they're trying to keep something from happening, and that Grosse Point, I mean, if they tore down half those buildings, you know, and put parking on the side of them, you know, they'd give enough clearance for the road to be expanded. But, you know, I mean, I don't know what they're trying to do. I talked to the city administrator there, manager, and I said, you know, you guys are keeping this up like you did I-696. You know, if you keep it up, we're never going to see it built in my time. And he said, no, in mine. So, I mean, with that attitude, then send this garbage to me is ridiculous. I mean, the road has to be improved. You come off the expressway and head north, there's a traffic jam, constantly all the way to 14-mile road, and you need improvements. I mean, everybody needs improvements. And they have to adjust their city. No one told them to build that close to the road, you know, with no zero depth. I mean, they don't have no depth to their buildings. You know, I mean, there's no consistency in the buildings, and they're half empty. And you look at economic development. I mean, you travel between 11-mile road and 12-mile road, half the buildings are empty, and they look like garbage besides. And they come over here and start telling us what we have to do with our property and tell us about traffic and all that, you know. And I'm saying is, you know, I mean, they don't cooperate with the police department, you know. I mean, we tried to do that. We tried to work with them on a jail, and that didn't work. All of a sudden, they want to put another stumbling block in the way of us. I mean, they really shouldn't exist. I mean, I can tell you what I think. I said, maybe, you know,
Tell us how you feel.
maybe this Metropolitan Authority, you know, maybe this Metropolitan Authority that's gonna say either cooperate or you get no funds. Maybe that's not waking these people up, that they can't survive any longer like they are. So, anyway, that's my spiel.
All right.
I think I'm
Duly
gonna say the
noted.
factual.
Especially the last thing you said. Ms. Seymour, anything, Ms. Banks, anything else, Mayor?
Yes. Council, since I've been mayor, we've had different, invitations to have sister cities. As you know, the Korean Cultural Center is here in Southfield, and their director, Ming Dong, has been very, persistent in having a relationship with a Korean Donkachan. It's D-O-N-G.
Dong Ducheon.
Dong Ducheon. The city, she has been working with the schools, with the superintendent of schools, and with my office. And the city has been identified, and the mayor and their city council members are planning to visit Southfield in April 2013. And the purpose of that meeting would be to develop a sister city relationship. And so I would just like the council to how will we deal with this? Because the city council of that city will be coming, as well as the mayor. And we have until April, but I wanted to bring it to the full body. Most progressive cities have numerous sister city relationships, and they want to do some of that interactive FaceTime or Skype, whatever the latest thing is, with the Korean classroom and the Southfield classroom. And I know Dr. Cook Robinson has been very receptive to this.
And the Martin Luther King Task Force would like us to Southfield be a sister city to,
Yeah.
Monaco or whatever.
Yeah.
They want to know.
Yes, thank you. So, personally, I don't have a problem with it. Maybe we should refer to the legislative committee since it's,
We have two sister cities now.
You got legislative.
We have Mackinac Island as a sister city, and Korea, Japan is a sister city, and that's what problem is with sister cities. They can't afford to send anybody here, we can't afford to send anybody there, so.
Well, Mexico's coming here again.
Yeah, Mexico's coming.
But I think the library, you know, is given all that information, and it's supposed to have the, you know, an educational thing between Korea, K-A-R, whatever. And
Does anybody have an objection?
I have no objection, I could care less.
Sister city relationship, you know, in the past, there's been objections, I personally don't see a problem with it, but anybody else?
What does it require?
It doesn't achieve
Nothing.
anything.
So what's the point?
Well, we're hosting people that wanna come here and be a sister city. We're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna go to Korea unless somebody has.
But I don't see the benefit. They wanna come here, it must be a benefit to them to have a sister city. It doesn't help us with anything.
Well, it doesn't have to be about helping us, it's
Well, what is it?
about good international relations.
If I may.
We don't need a relationship.
Oh, gee. You have a cultural center right here in the city, and these people come to our community all the time, and to say that would be insensitive. However,
I'm saying it anyway.
it is insensitive then.
No, it's not.
What it is, this community has chosen Southfield as their cultural center. They're very proud to be located. They have programs all the time. They're invited. What usually happens, like, I will tell you, the Japanese consulate said, you know, one of the things, and he actually brought the resources here and talked to Wanda about it, is teaching Japanese in our schools. And they have resources, money, funding for teachers. And so we say we're this multicultural city. And we say that we embrace all this diversity, even though sometimes we may be insensitive. But if we truly are going to embrace cultural diversity, then we should be doing things that does that. And so there is exchange of art, talking about outdoor art. I've seen the Sister Cities actually send art here that will symbolize their presence in our city, and we send something to them. There are economic development opportunities as well. They come and talk about economic. The world now is global. It's not just limited to here. And we do have Korean companies in our city.
Sure. Well, I have in the city, you have Lawrence Beck over here that has Chinese. Today, globally, Chinese, it's very important for trade in Asia. So, I mean, where do you stop and how do you take advantage of it? I know Highland Park Baptist Church has a delegation from China that they meet every Sunday, and they have a luncheon for, they have about 27 students now, and it's growing. And so, we are global, but you've got to make use of what you have. We have Koreans here, we have, the young man who is assistant to the Japanese consul is a Southfielder, a good friend of mine, plays hockey with my kids. So, but, I know we've got a lot of consuls. We have Lebanon, we have Armenia, we have everything.
They're reaching out to
but unless you can arrange a partnership, neither one does any good. They make one trip and then you see them.
Well, let's see. We can be open-minded to it. That's
I am open-minded about it, but
That's,
it's,
the
I don't want to spend any money in the city doing it.
And at minimum, we could have them come to a meeting and say hello. It costs us nothing.
That's right.
So,
Noted.
Mr. Moss is in your...
Slovenia. We've got a master local. Slovenia. That's a good one.
Anything else, Mayor?
Just to, Jim, the litter along the exit when you're going, is it south, is it east? The exit for Evergreen Road, when you're coming off 696, there's tires and there's trash on there. That always seems to be an accumulation of trash. And most of the time when we call MDOT, they'll come and pick it up. But I don't want us to, and also coming up, and it's Laker Village, so maybe we can send them a note. But when you're coming up off of 696 on Southfield Road, there's so much trash on that exit. And
we dump it,
I don't know.
Are you?
How much direction?
When you're on 696 going west.
That may open up a window of my car.
Yeah, it's right about that.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I do.
I'm done.
Okay. On probably a little serious note, given the recent events that have happened, on a discussion with Mr. Charette, that the legislature did go until 4:30 in the morning on their last day of session. And I'll pull this up on my phone because among the things that came out of it was properly licensed gun owners could bring their concealed pistols into daycares, churches, schools, hospitals, and other areas that they've been previously banned. And there was an amendment that was offered that got it voted on, and with approval, was that institutions could have the permission to opt out of the law and continue to ban people from bringing their concealed weapons within the walls if a statement is posted. So that was where it sat as of last week. Then it got to I think the Senate had to concur those changes, and even the governor today, this is as of today, didn't know if that part remained in there. And then he said something like that there was clearly a possibility that he might veto it. I don't know what that means. So only to put more work.
Friday.
Yeah, only to put more work on the legislative committee. If this stands, if he signs it into law, and there's an opt-out, I think we need to investigate as a city how can we take that and do something meaningful with it, because I firmly am against it. And if we have an ability to initiate postings on public institutions throughout this community, we should be the leader in doing that.
But it wouldn't be to municipal property.
Yeah, but it could be to public,
Schools and
exactly,
churches and so on.
exactly.
Wouldn't they municipal, you mean, we would still.
We don't have that exemption.
No.
Yeah.
We don't have it.
That's where the open carry has been a problem all along.
That's right.
So I'm not sure how it stands, I'm not sure what the governor is gonna do with it, but I think we have more clarity this week, but that's something we need to look at, is how do we notify key places in our community to keep them safe from
As
weaponry.
we should.
Yeah.
Just a personal note, today I get a Christmas card from a friend in Florida who said, what is going on in Michigan? I mean, all of this
Yeah.
stuff that has happened the last 2 weeks, and just said, it's time for you guys to fight
We're
back.
positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're reading about it all over. It's just,
Let's
We're
I'll
the
keep-
national news.
I'll keep the council posted, because it could change 180 degrees just this week alone, but
Yeah.
something to keep on our radar.
please. Mr. Fraser, anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One is, I'm not sure I like Nancy's new idea about the binders, because when I get my package in the binder, I know I gotta wear a tag. But if it comes to the package, I can come casual.
You have to wear a tie?
Yeah.
Well, we can make a notation, please wear a tie.
Just put it-
Put a tie on it.
Put a tie on it, so like-
Just make the regular meeting larger,
Yeah.
that's all.
The other thing is, in here, Ms. Ward sent us this application for a new SDM liquor license.
Yes.
And it says that,
Yeah.
well, I saw Sue Ward's name highlighted. But it says that they don't need any approval from us as a council, but they have to follow all the building codes and make sure that, how do we control, if we don't have anything to say about it, how do we control whether or not the building is up to code?
They still have to give C of O to open.
Oh,
For who?
if I can respond?
Yeah.
They still have to come to the clerk's office. I mean, what happens is the state notifies us that an application has been made for a new license. We then send them an application they have to fill out, and then they still file the fee, and there's a process. It's sent to the police department, the building department, we make sure that the taxes are paid up and current on the building, and then we forward any suggestion and/or recommendation based on what the police department says, the building department says, the treasury department says, up to Lansing. This is that new law that was passed, I believe it was in June, that we were never even informed of through the Liquor Control Commission, that basically if someone new was going to come into your city, and it's not a Class C license, it's just for beer and wine, that the local body had no more control. And I wanted to provide you with a copy of this, because this is that little store across from, like, ice party stores.
The white building
And I
went out
know
of business.
the owner of Treasure Island has been calling, screaming at me, how can you do this? And I'm like, well, it's not us, you've got to contact the state. So I just wanted council to be aware, I don't know what the state rule is with reference to opening up another similar business across the street.
It's 500 feet if it's, isn't it, with, but the exception to that is when it's a 5-lane road or 4-lane road.
And I don't know if it's 4 or 5, so if it's,
Well, it is 5.
okay, it is 5, okay,
Yeah,
so.
there's a middle lane.
Because there's a turn lane in there.
So we do have someone who has applied for a license across the street, but he does have to still go through the whole process, and right now his application is in the police department.
Okay, if our rule is 500 feet,
No, it's not ours, it's the state.
well, if the state's rule is 500 feet, who checks that?
I would hope it would be the state of Michigan.
Yeah,
but
because
I-
road commission, they're the final
Right.
ones to say.
No, let's say that it's not on the other side of the street.
Oh, okay.
Let's say it's next door.
Yeah.
Well, we would notify them of that, what they choose to do with that information. We would at least say it's within so many feet.
And we have the right to contact, I mean, if they, when I contacted Lansing, they said if you are not in favor of something, you can write a letter. Doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna listen, we're still gonna do our own thing, but, they wanna hear from the local community.
You can send a resolution up objecting to it. You know, SDMs are, unless there's something wrong with the building, the control commission just gives them, period. I mean, they could be on every corner.
I think this is the first time that in Southfield, this is gonna be across the street from someone else who
Yeah, well,
also sells it.
usually somebody doesn't want to go in against another store because they're related, you know, but, you know, one's got liquor and the other one doesn't, so the chances of the guy with the wine license, he's not gonna make it anyway.
I guess that's it.
All right, if there's nothing else, happy holidays to everyone. Meeting adjourned.